just been reselling elsewhere. These guys are making they don't call the cops, so it's okay. Like, the problem I felt that is you're comparing actual theft of items that are causing stores to close down. Are there YouTubers that have stopped, like, making content because somebody reacted and stole their shit? Like, holy shit, that one guy. That was like a third. Oh, this one. Why don't rates get reported? Must not be a problem. Hey, man. Let him out there, just like, about him. Just fighting people without engaged them. Oh, it's content. We get to read about it. Talk about it. But, yeah, okay. Well, the thing is, after what you said about the whole copyright extent, probably for about a year, it sounds like your intellectual property was, let's say, regular property, is something that you should let your audience know about. Like, the problem is we've got a lot of, like, debate recently over, like, defensive property. And there's a guy like me who's, likes to argue the most, like, extreme versions of anything I have. So he obviously likes to defend intellectual property a lot. But obviously, there are huge differences between intellectual property and, like, actual property. Materially, right? Because theoretically, a huge number of people could steal a piece of intellectual property, but they're not necessarily depriving you of the property itself, they're depriving you of, like, rights from the property, which is fundamentally different. Not to say, like, one is okay and one isn't, but, yeah. Also, I respect your intentions to purify your suffering, but it is what it is. You ain't doing that. It's not gonna happen. Well, I know, like, usually, that's comments. Well, yeah, and then it makes you understand. Anyway, at least you feel that way, right? You want to be like, okay, these people want to go after them. Oh, I do. They'll fend off their go. Every consumer turns off the critical thinking part of the brain when it comes to this issue. The amount of mental gymnastics and insecurity and tweets discussing this is something to behold. Kind of expected more from Destiny. Oh, hey, but you like history, that guy. They're like more huge threads. They're like one of them seems like Jesus, yeah. But anyway, man, no. So it's good to know that there's a lot of pushback and push forward, and that you can figure this out, you can direct them, let them know that they've fallen, right? Oh, no, right. They've all fallen in the same pit. Well, they'll crawl out of different Reddit accounts. Yeah. So like, we got out of the same friends with other accounts. Oh, yeah, there were a couple of other people tweet like, getting like 15 Reddit accounts, just let Destiny know, I'm comment about the critical loser fuck, whose content I will no longer visualize people. They're like, bro, holy shit. Sorry, go ahead. What's the video? We are at 35 out of 56. 35, wait, say that again, sorry. 35 minutes out of 56 minutes. Jesus, okay, go for it. That's stronger. They used to try and satirize people who are critical of non-transformative Twitch reactions. The sentiment behind it is that if a reaction streamer doesn't find the content they're watching particularly engaging, they're not going to have a particularly strong reaction. If you're there for that genuine reaction to the content they're watching, and their reaction really is very minimal, then solely by asking them to change that reaction, you're asking them to be fake. You can't control your emotions. It's not their fault if they didn't have an emotional response to the thing they're watching. As this conversation sums it up, if your problem is react harder, then my reply is create harder, and maybe you get much better reactions. So true. The videos are boring. That's the problem. Just like that. So you can, if you want, merge this room with the room next to it. So if you look at, you finally achieve your dreams of a bedroom kitchen combo. Finally, now I can sleep in a room that has 2 separate microwaves in it. You know, having 2 of something completely unnecessarily is becoming a running theme. You know who reacted hard? Jinx. It says no belongs here. Oh, sorry, you stole my lunch. This video's Jinx was always laughing and smiling and soy facing. You know how powerful the strong emotions. Jinx is now better than XQC and Hassan. Yeah, look where it was really tumbled. So the content he was reacting to, and people seem to forget this. All the same problems that apply to these modern Twitch streamers also apply to Jinx's content. I love that this video being so fucking long ago. A lot of examples is reacting to a video. So shows you how far we've come. Trying to be great from here with the entirety of his reaction to my video, that wouldn't have fixed the issue. Summing up the criticism as react harder does make it sound unreasonable, because saying react harder would be unreasonable. But summing it up as contribute something would be a lot more accurate. I mean, contribute something and make your reaction stream a meaningfully different experience to watching the original video. It's not just a matter of react harder. The fact is great. Watch every day. It's awfully sour over here, LOL. Enjoy the signal to get fuel. I literally wouldn't know who you are if it wasn't for the song streaming your video, but keep drama about it, lol. What a nightmare. You're such a fragile little person. If you're mad someone lets you do your channel, but doesn't react harder or the way you want it. Shut. The idea that I should just shut up and be thankful for the free clout is another pretty common one. And to that, my immediate thought is that you are grossly overestimating the amount of clout this kind of thing provides. Somewhere between 150 and 180 of the son's fans came to watch my video following the stream, which on average translates to a grand total of about 40 cents and 7 subscribers. So, thanks, I guess. Now I'm sure that mileage will vary from different streamers reacting to different videos. Some reactions will provide more, and some reactions will provide less. As a streamer, it's possible you'll provide someone clout by doing this, but you certainly can't base your behavior on the assumption that that's definitely what will happen. Which is what Hassan does. Last like, well, what's up, like, are you taking views away? No, most YouTubers don't mind that, actually love that shit when Twitch streamers react to their videos, because they get a fucking fat box. On the topic of taking views away, though, it's unclear that if by doing this, streamers take away potential views from videos they're reacting to. It's entirely possible that some of the 40,000 live views of that stream would have ended up watching the video if they've already seen it when bothered. This isn't the kind of thing that YouTube analytics can tell us, so we just don't know. It is also interesting that everyone seems to be overestimating the amount of clout that this kind of thing provides. Not sure. I want the free clout. It's not free clout, it doesn't say whose video it is. What the fuck? Did the channel name and name of the video up the entire time? No, you didn't. But also, yeah, you are allowed to say no to this kind of thing. That's allowed. I imagine that if PewDiePie, being the largest individual creator on YouTube, downloaded and then just re-uploaded one of my videos to his channel, that'd probably get me some clout. I imagine that if Will Smith broke into my apartment and started filming me for his next movie, that'd get me some free clout as well, which is not equivalent. Just to be clear, I know what, I would happily let Will Smith into my apartment to film me for a movie, but the key with all of these things is permission. You can't just go around imposing this kind of give and take exchange on people without knowing whether or not they agree to it, especially when we're giving us 40 cents. So those are the arguments in favor of this kind of thing, and I've got to say, I wasn't particularly impressed. While I'm here, I would like to thank Apple Commander, Simple CJ Blatty, Nicholas Diorio, and Bertie Burke. Credit, you skip as far, right? True. So that's Nicholas' name, fuck that guy. Oh. For the comments in that last section, and I would like to file the original celebrity sentence started like this. I sincerely apologize if you hear chickens in the background. Side out to record, they were fucking up the storm. White out to keep them awake. No rats have them near them, like doubles. You thought they're after food. Yeah, you can hear chickens in the background of the clips that she sent me. She also, later, of her own free will, decided to send me a second version without chickens in the background, but I elected to use the chicken one. I'm a bad person. Hopefully, after all of that, I've done my part to put dent in the attitude that Twitch streamers can just play other people's content in full without permission, without transforming it in any way. I've seen a lot of streamers take other people's content for granted like this. Honestly, it's just not cool. But this video is not a personal attack directed towards any streamer who's ever done this. I just want to encourage those streamers to hopefully, well, first things first, give proper credit, especially if your justification for doing what you're doing is that you pay the content creators through exposure by giving them a fat bomb. Ultimately, though, there is no one correct way to do reaction content. It's just an earnest fundamental use the argument. Obviously, don't give a shit, doesn't confirm it, doesn't want to make sure it happens, good whatsoever. It's a useful argument. What do you mean by that? The exposure stuff. Like, well, the point that I think you agree with, right, is that a fat bomb should really constitute 100, what was that, like 50 views extra on a video? Well, no, it's not a very fat bomb at all, is it? No, not really. So he's using that shield, as would be provided by anyone else, making actual, like, cogent arguments against this. Well, he don't give a fuck. He's just going to take advantage of it anyway. So I think one of those comments you read earlier that I thought was interesting was, did you believe it is possible that any of these streamers, especially the pirate ones, know what they're doing, understand the damage? And I'm like, yeah, but I can get away with it. Well, I mean, to be clear, we still don't know the damage. Very standards, right? No, I'm saying let's pretend. Do you believe that if someone actually believes there is damage, but doesn't identify? I mean, yeah, there's always going to be people like that. There's possibly. But I think that like the damage is apparent thing that like, I think public pressure would very quickly make that style of content like unpopular. I think it would stop. Actually, I think that would happen, and I actually think it is going to happen eventually. I think this is getting louder and louder from episode. I'm curious what's going to happen next. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. A matter of mutual respect between creator and reactor, and not taking anyone else's work for granted. Now let's take a look at what Hassan said about all this in response to my stream. YouTuber made a video with screenshots, not donkeys, mad at you. React to how screenshots happened that you worked really hard on, and made all by yourself. Why? Because I was cooking while that was happening. Is that why? So I'm happy for you to react to my videos. Give proper credit, however, please don't just let them play as fillers. You guys take very little, just having life, or leaving them in the room. Like, come on, man, if I'm a react content, just surprise the substances, you give me react proper credit. Okay, there. Oh, okay, sticking around the bell. Good. I totally fine. That's nice to see, isn't it? I mean, I'm waiting to get this shit. Well, you know how this works. Oh, no. Obviously set this up. No. As long as I was fine. Hold on. I was just stopping you right now. As long as I was totally fine. I thought I was totally fine. As long as, yeah, see, just like I said, you make people wear this wrong, then they would stop, right? Right, yes, excellent. 100%. There's a little bit more video we can just toss off for the sake of it, though. Sure, there's a little bit of news. Yeah, probably. My main thing, react harder. Oh, so I have like 30 minutes of Hassan's response to work with in my editing room here. If I was the kind of shady bug to choose the clips I play with maximum. Pre-order now and get a free storage estimate. Some bias, I can make Hassan look like a wonderful saint. I personally don't care. But if others do, then dude, absolutely, I would respect that 1,000%. Or I can make him look like the biggest geeking asshole who ever lived. It's such a genius, dude. Oh, just show your channeling. Oh man, how is that so smart? Like, what is this attitude that you have? You stupid man. Is that really about the guy? That's shot, right? No, he's talking about, yeah, but like he's talking to someone who just showed up a few channel credits and he's like, oh, which is funny. Like, I will like, the easiest win ever, but it's a sign. He finds a way. How we first got from the same stream? Well, all will be explained. And I feel that I need to start that explanation by giving credit where credit is due. You know, giving credit support. As soon as he found out that I didn't really appreciate his non-transformative reactions to when he played my content, he apologized and made it clear that he wouldn't play any of my videos on his streams again. Yeah, every right to be like, yeah, fuck off, what you watch my video? I will never watch their stuff ever again. For the record. If they're upset about it. If you don't want to watch your stuff, I will gladly never watch it. I'm really sorry, I apologize. What Hassan seems to have respect for is a YouTuber's right to opt out of something like this. If a content creator makes a fucking YouTube video and they're not happy with me like 6 months ago, watching it, I fucking won't watch. Personally, I don't know if other YouTubers do care, then dude, absolutely. I just won't watch it. I personally don't care. Okay? I get upset if they like use it and misrepresent it or anything like that. I personally don't care. But if others do, then dude, absolutely, I would respect that. Not okay to play someone else's video if they don't want you to play it. I mean, it is good that he has this attitude, but ultimately, the phrase bare minimum does spring to mind. Like, yeah, him saying this is better than the alternative, but the alternative would be him going, I don't care how creative feels. I get to take whoever's content I want, and then doing an evil ad, saying sorry and promising not to play my videos on his streams anymore. You know, that's cool, but then he does go ahead and follow it up with stuff like this. You get yelled at for pausing five videos, you get yelled at for not reacting hard enough. What are you supposed to do now? I mean, what do you mean? I'm literally going to do exactly what I've been doing, which is whatever the I want to do, bitch. What are you talking about? I don't really ask for more explicit declaration that it's not going to change the way he does things. I'm perfectly happy with the situation where Hassan's not going to do this to one of my videos again. But I'm not really here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about generally the wider issue of React content. And nothing about that has been changed by this apology. Hassan even says that he's used to creators getting annoyed at him for this, and that this is just a standard apology that he issues out whenever that happens. Like, some content creators get good about it, and when they do, I'm like, I'm really sorry, and I will never do this again. And it's as simple as that. It could be argued that the reason he's happy to just make the same mistake over and over again is that it's more convenient for him to just apologize whenever he's called out, but it would be for him to actually stop doing the thing he's apologizing for. He's apologized for upsetting me, but I was never really upset. I just think that what he's doing is piss. What he's not apologized for is what he's doing, which is the actual thing that I took issue with in the first place, and it's something he spends most of his stream arguing in favor of. A lot of the arguments he makes are the arguments we've actually already covered in the stream. Like, this is like not that relevant to be honest. Yeah, I walked away while the video's going on because I'm fucking, what do you call it? I'm cooking and I'm eating. And they didn't like my react. They were like, react harder. Their criticism, even if it's like react harder, is that might be a bullshit criticism, but like they're correct. If they're like, I don't want you to react to my video, then we've already been over the whole react harder thing. We don't need to go over it again. Hassan also seems to subscribe to the extremists need to do this because they're live for however many hours a day he cuts them. He likes this one a lot actually. It's normal to walk away when you're fucking live for 10 hours. You know what I mean? I like cuss style a lot. Like everyone tells me how zero confidence is so low. I don't know. Maybe because I'm live for fucking 8 hours. You can leave a sign saying gone for it, back and forth, just do credit where you actually react while he's in the room. Doesn't seem like a lot to have. These motherfuckers are like, if you a bottle, dude. Just doing someone, not someone anymore. This shit is unbelievable, right? Like, you can try this stuff, but he's good. Well, the problem is right now, Hassan is complaining complaints of the viewers as opposed to the content creators. Because viewers will make these complaints. You know, stop reacting so much for that or whatever. Those are less of the viewers, less of the it's fundamentally separate argument than what the people that are. Well, I'm going to put you in a bubble. Like, he thinks what's being said here is that you cannot leave. There's like nobody's fucking saying that. No, there are people saying that, but it's the viewers saying that. Right? The viewers saying content. Yeah, they want to see how they imagine to make attempts to whatever, yada, yada. I mean, people saying like, oh, this is bored, 7 years ago, this, but like, yeah. No, whatever. Yeah, but I'm saying that it's not something complaining the complaints of the viewers there with the content creators that are complaining about their content being good, basically. But like, you just, skip those ones. Here's what they have to say. Like, oh, I don't want you to be peeing. I want you to put something on the team. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not familiar with the legend of the one guy? Wait, yeah, I was actually, I was just asking about this because of Twitch culture stuff as opposed to YouTube, even though you're like, what do you want now? YouTube, kick Rumble? I'm just whatever. How much? Okay, well, anyway, the whole, like, it's like, keep shut what I'm saying all the time, getting one guy. Do you just talking about someone's arguments in chat? People, streamers are very sensitive to chat, so it's very easy for one guy in chat to say something that triggers a at you, and you're stuck on that guy's comments forever. Like, that's gonna think forever. Why make it a name? I don't know, just when you're like, oh, we'll just ignore the crazy people in chat. That's not possible. As streamers, we exist in one guy. That's like part of our. Well, I was actually gonna say that part of you guys' content is getting mad at one guy, so. It's okay. I'm seeing you shoot. You fucking find someone in chat who says something dumb and respond to it. That's fine. Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's one guy. There's one guy in chat says some shit. No, I mean like as though it's a bad thing or thing you need to avoid doing. Like, that's what I was talking about. Because it'll be like one guy just saying something that nobody else is really saying, but then you get hyperfixated on one dipshit. Okay. Now, yeah. I mean, it is funny. Like how like someone saying I don't want to go pee. That's fun. Yeah, it's true. There's stream dollars like outside the game. On him, I was thinking different things, just watching EPR stream. It's just rubbing the wrong way. Like, how do you think of your viewers? You just stream your break. What am I supposed to do, die? Like, I don't understand. The sun reacts to someone's suggestion that you could just put up a VRB screen or something, like inflating that would then ask you to pee in a bottle on his desk. Yeah, those things are the same. He actually needs to do this, or he just can't have breaks. It's weird and flat out incorrect, but again, we've already covered it. He also makes the free cloud argument, but he adds something to it that we've not seen before. Most YouTubers don't mind that and actually love that shit when Twitch streamers react to their videos because they get a fucking fat bump. We still have the free cloud argument. Now it's also packaged in the idea that most YouTubers support and like this kind of thing happening. Most other content creators on YouTube and all around don't give a shit if you watch the videos, or they like it. They literally like it. They want you to watch the video. Please record your answer and send it to me. Would you be okay with it if the streamer played one of your videos in full on their stream without saying much or really adding anything? No. No, I would not. Yes, not. Well, I mean, I could kind of do that. Like with his no, I would be okay with the streamer playing one of my videos in its entirety without even really adding to it. If they give me a shout out, try to send people my way, then sure, but otherwise, no. I'd be enough if I would be okay with it, but I also feel like I have 5 minutes. No, those are very specific exceptions. No. Well, I've got that, right? Oh, yes. Because if people didn't do stupid short-sighted things like that, then we'd have nothing to talk about. I'm sorry repetitive cycle of drama on YouTube would grind to a halt, and I'd have to fill the rest of my day with anything else, like work. Probably yes, if they were scripted. For this much larger streamer than me, and the way that they show look who it is. Results in a bunch of their fans coming to my channel. Yeah. I would have a problem with it, but just on sort of like a principle level, I guess I feel very offended that they just show my video and not provide any extra commentary or any extra substance to it. So yeah, I asked a lot of YouTubers if they would be okay with it, and most of them said no. I chose these YouTubers literally random for people I've already had DMs with. They've got a good selection of different styles, different topics, different channel sizes, and yeah, a lot of no's in there. And the majority of yeses had caveats and conditions. If they give me a shout out, try to send people my way, then sure. Which again, just goes to show the importance of mutual respect by doing this kind of thing. The thing that interests me though is the discrepancy between what Hassan was saying and what we're seeing here. So what's the difference? I don't believe for a second that Hassan was lying. So what gives? They want you to watch their video. And I have many examples of this of like entrepreneurs who I'm friends with, like Andrew from Channel 5, reach out to me to inform me that their new video's out so that we can react. He's like, I can't wait to see you and reaction to this new video that we put up. I'm pretty sure I know exactly why that discrepancy is there. Hassan appears to be conflating the kind of reaction content I'm not okay with the kind of reaction content I absolutely support. Like a lot of the commenters we brought up earlier, Hassan doesn't seem to have drawn a line between reaction content that adds something and reaction content that really doesn't. Hassan has provided reactions to meet all of the standards I've outlined in this video. They're the kind of reactions that I actively encourage people to make and that I'm sure most creators would be absolutely thrilled to receive from a big Twitch streamer. It appears though that as far as Hassan is concerned, both these types of reaction are just reaction content to him, and he's painting it all with the same brush. This conflation is first demonstrated when in response to me saying, please give credit and contribute something, he says, oh, this person doesn't want me reacting to their content. If you don't want me watching stuff, I will gladly never watch it. I'm really sorry, I apologize. I will never watch their stuff ever again. For the record. React harder is that might get really loud because you know that the subtext that I should be like, I was benefiting you. I was benefiting you, and I'm gonna take away from you. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The first person, but like, they're basically like, I don't want you to react to my video, which is kind of a weird response to a comment, which I actively tell him I'm fine with him reacting to my content. So I'm just I'm happy for you to react to my videos. It would fully explain why he made these comments if he's conflating those two types of reaction. And of course, it does make sense for him to think that way. If he has dismissed the criticism as just react harder, why would he draw a line between reaction content that does and doesn't adhere to a criticism that he doesn't view as valid? So when he says most YouTubers don't mind that and actually love that shit when Twitch streamers react to the video, he's talking about just Twitch reactions in general, which yeah, most YouTubers do appreciate. I appreciate that. I really like it when that kind of thing happens to me. But what Hassan seems to not understand is that most YouTubers do have a line where they're no longer okay with the reaction content. This line is going to be in a different place for different creators. Most YouTubers like to receive reactions, but far fewer are comfortable with being used as filler as the streamer has some downtime. This is a distinction that it's vital to understand and respect if you're going to be doing regular reaction content on stream. Speaking of the free cloud argument, Hassan also expands on it in a way we've not seen before. That's the reason why sponsors pay money to Twitch streamers to like play their video games, for example. There's a reason for this because they want as many eyeballs as possible on it, and then people will go and fucking find it on their own. Hassan seems to love bringing up find it on their own, and you literally have to stand like a shit in chat. That was a really bad mischaracterization. He wants to bolster a position like this one. Basically, the whole video game industry not only tolerates but actively supports YouTubers and streamers playing the games. Hassan likes to use this fact to demonstrate there's actually a mutually beneficial relationship between a copyright holder and a streamer streaming their copyrighted content. Now, this actually is a great way to demonstrate the level of publicity that a streamer can provide, but it doesn't ignore the reasons that video games are one of the only forms of media this applies to. Basically, I've recently played through both classic Star Wars Battlefront games. If I decided to stream both those games in their entirety to my audience, even without commentary, none of my audience would have actually played those games just by watching my stream. Anyone who when watching the stream had thought, you're funny guys, he did, it'll likely would have taken down my copyright. Bro, he's monetized by the owners for the soundtrack still. Streamers playing the games. Hassan likes to use this fact to demonstrate there's actually a mutually beneficial relationship between a copyright holder and a streamer streaming their copyrighted content. Now, this actually is a great way to demonstrate the level of publicity that a streamer can provide, but it doesn't ignore the reasons that video games are one of the only forms of media this applies to. Basically, I've recently played through both classic Star Wars Battlefront games. If I decided to stream both those games in their entirety to my audience, even without commentary, none of my audience would have actually played those games just by watching my stream. Anyone who when watching the stream had thought, you're funny guys, he did, it'll likely would have taken down my copyright, or at least monetized by the owners for the soundtrack still from the movies. Which, you know, makes sense. That's sort of the it's from the movies into the games, and like the Lord of the Rings games on my game, you have footage from the films, but extremely enough for the cover up the voice. So then you play GTA, you can't listen to the radio, someone said, yeah, oh, that game looks really fun, and developed an interest in actually playing it, but then had to go and buy the game to do that. I've also recently watched the entirety of Smiling Friends, which is a show, not a game. If I streamed the entirety of that to my audience, then anyone who watched the stream thought, hey, this show looks really funny, and then developed an interest in watching it, would have already seen it, because I just showed it to them. Now, that's not to say that I'm watching potential season 2 if and when that comes out, but maybe go and pursue some episodes that I didn't manage to catch on my stream. Meanwhile, you can go and buy some Smiling Friends merch, because from this interaction, Smiling Friends has gained a fan and all the benefits that come with that. But the companies that own TV shows and films tend to be a lot less positive about this kind of thing than the companies that own video games do. I could just as easily argue that the stranglehold these companies keep on preventing people from uploading their copyrighted content is proof that this kind of interaction actually hurts people. But the fact of the matter is that none of these mediums are directly equivalent to one another. Video games are a medium that get all of the benefits of this kind of interaction with basically none of the drawbacks. There's a reason it's different from medium to medium. Those are definitely the main arguments he relied upon during the stream, but he also said some some other stuff that I found interesting, so let's take a brief look at that as well. One short part of the stream that interests me in particular is the part where he talks about why he thinks he doesn't need permission to do this kind of thing. There's not a big place always video wine, he doesn't need to ask permission to watch I don't see anything. No, I don't. It's fucking ridiculous. I mean, I did say, sure. Another clip I find interesting is one where he's talking about the fact that he left the room for a while. I throw up the on my phone, and I'm watching it, I'm simulcasting on my phone as it is playing on the screen. If there's a moment that I want to chime in with something, I will literally run back and take there. It's the same as like me sitting there not saying it. I agree. It's exactly like he was sitting there and not saying anything. I'm starting to think he doesn't understand the issue that people take with this kind of thing. I guess though logically this means he does understand that when he's just sitting there not saying anything, which is something he spends a lot of time doing, he may as well just not be in the room. And finally, I know you're curious about it. Let's have a look at that clip. No, just show your channel name, dumbass. This happens when someone in chat tells his son he needs to just show the channel name. Show their fucking channel name, dude. It's not a big deal. No shit, dumbass. What kind of a fucking baboon are you? The son gets mad at this because it's like he's mad at how much he agrees with it. You disagree with that? Why do you? Oh god, I fucking despise these bitches, dude. Hold on, he's getting big mad because he thinks this is really obvious. I swear to fucking god. Like, it's such a fucking biggest dude. No, just show your channel name, dumbass. How is it so fucking hard? Like, what is this attitude that you have? It's stupid. Yeah, I know, I agree. Hey man, what kind of like? He has some of the best clips online, like reacting to comments. It's fucking hilarious. No, it's the master of the one there. Oh god, we had like a compilation on one of the episodes. Some of them was just you reacting to them, so I can find like the originals. It's something else. You know, he's really bad at it, but it's really funny. You know, but you make it seem like our purposely was like fucking hiding or something. It was literally on my screen for like a fucking hour, you idiot. So, in my opinion, like a fucking hour, you idiot, is a strange way to phrase 18 seconds. Yeah, that's how long my channel name was on screen during Hassan's original stream. The rest of the time, no, I'm not sure how you could possibly think it was that. Like, how could you be that unfamiliar with your own setup? In thinking this doesn't make any sense at all. Unless, maybe when he says the channel name was on my screen for like an hour, he's referring to the second stream that he did. I mean, there it is, and there it is again. Not for an hour, but for long enough where saying he was up there for an hour is like a reasonable level of hyperbole. If that is what he means, though, then he's referring to something that he only did because I called it out. Meaning this would be another instance of, well, if they complain, I'll do what I should have done in the first place, but otherwise I'll just play their videos without showing their channel name. And since call-outs seem to do what it takes to get streamers to do what they should have been doing the whole time, this is me doing a call-out. Man, I can't wait to see how this video goes down. It's sure going to be interesting. But it was a mess, by the way. This is the video that Denims and Irrelevant responded to, and they were fucking morons with it. It was actually pretty great. It was funny going next to logic. I was like, lucky you didn't fucking make an idiot of yourself. Responded to this side because holy fuck, the arguments they were pulling out. You won't believe it. You know what? If you want to know what they are, though, the 5 episodes are all there. Yeah, told you this. That's all from me today. If you enjoyed this video, good. That is the video. That's JMC's channel, by the way. We thought that was inflated. I just like to see more. Okay, so in a second, I'm going to listen to the Nazi comment. Hold on. I watch the videos ever again and I move on. This is what I said 1 year ago. Since then, he made a video, or watch it on an 8 when you break up. Wait, did that happen? Wait, what? They made a video. Afterwards, they had like a bunch of Nazis with kill stream get together and do an 8-hour reaction to my entire stream. It was an 8 or 10 hour podcast they did on that. Okay? And I apologized back then. And they held on to the grudge. And then they made another video now. Another video a year later. So I apparently all the OTV people unfollowed Wendy. Oh shit. Uh-oh. Look, I'll join multiple 8-hour streams. If you expect me to think that person is charitable at this point, I don't know what to tell you. Because it's not. You're a fucking psycho. If you think that is a charitable person, no. It's a deranged person. It's a 5-minute video, which I apologize for. It's incredibly petty. It's incredibly fucking watching videos every day. It's what I said. 1 fucking year ago. Since then, you video. Afterwards, they had a bunch of Nazi kill stream. Get together with 8-hour reaction to my stream. Oh, a bunch of Nazis together with 8-hour reaction to my live stream. Gotcha. Yep. But hey, you literally get about as 5 seconds of it in this, so. Alright, well. How you spent holiday? Stay safe. It has been fun. Good luck with whatever it is you get up to. I'll be around, I suppose. If, oh, yeah, you got it. You should have parts of the channel, so I'm not going to go on up on Instagram for a second. Sure. I'll leave you guys beforehand. Because, you know, you guys have been too long. Should have been someone I knew about us also. Yeah. I'll let you go. See you, dude. Bye-bye. How would you this thing? See you next time. Uh-oh. Hello! Today we're going to talk about deck building in Cards the Universe, which we call Q for short. A game so cunning you could paint a ginger, pop a chicken in its mouth and call it a fox. You see, Q includes a silly amount of almost erudite cards about everything.
Today we're talking about Mr. Beast suing over his disgusting, revolting, inedible Mr. Beast burgers. Break down the horrifying story around this doomsday mom. The government investigating itself and finding out it did it. Why I'm gonna sue Taco Bell. We're gonna talk about all that and so much more in today's brand new Philip Branco Show daily dive into the news. So buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into it. Starting with, Mr. Beast is now suing Mr. Beast Burger, or rather his burger part, which is an absolutely wild development.
Good, their fucking burgers suck dick.
Millions of kids taking to food apps to get some Mr. Beast Burger, people saying this is the future. But the situation has obviously now changed. So for some background, he partnered with a company called Virtual Dining Concepts to get this ghost kitchen operation run. But the thing is, the burgers have been receiving tons and tons of negative reviews, with Mr. Beast claiming the virtual dining concept ruined the quality of the food in efforts to expand the project. And now Bloomberg reporting that Beast Investments LLC filed a lawsuit alleging breach of contract and asking the federal judge to terminate his business relationship with them. Those are the Verge publishing that lawsuit in full, and in it, Mr. Beast
wouldn't mind them coming back and trying it again.
were disgusting,
Fuck that
revolting,
shit.
inedible. He questioning why would Mr. Beast put his name on such a horrible product, saying that it was the worst burger they had ever had, noting that over half of the Mr. Beast virtual restaurants have less than 2 out of 5 stars. Also, in a separate document that is a whopping 85 pages long, Mr. Beast's team lists examples of negative reviews from platforms like Yelp, Reddit, and YouTube. And there, you also see reviews from big names like Eddie Burbach's video titled The Deceptive World of Ghost Kitchen. And in that, it's a great video, I'll link to it down below. He talks about issues with ghost kitchens in general before transitioning to Mr. Beast Burger specifically, mentioning some of the negative reviews they've done and then eating a handful of the menu items.
This is what the Impossible Beast style burger is supposed to look like. And this looks like if somebody drew a burger for me. How is this real? It looks like a Krabby Patty.
This tastes like a cafeteria burger. I was really hoping I would have a positive experience, but all of the ingredients just feel really, really cheap.
Man, this is supposed to be a smash burger. What the hell is this?
The document also pointing to an H3 podcast titled We Ordered Mr. Beast Burger and it was a disaster. And that you see Ethan Klein saying,
if you're looking to order a hamburger, this is the last place you should do it. And it wasn't even cheap. $12 for real, Sam?
I know, it was so fucking expensive. And it was trash.
It's fine, but it certainly wasn't worth the money, and it wouldn't satisfy a hungry person's burger craving. And so you have the lawsuit claiming that virtual dining concepts has harmed Mr. Beast's reputation and brand. Also claiming because quality and fan customer satisfaction are paramount above all else for Mr. Beast, he expected that his fans would be the recipients of excellent customer service and superior branded food product. Unfortunately, however, because virtual dining concept was more focused on rapidly expanding the business as a way to pitch the virtual restaurant model to other celebrities for its own benefit, it was not focused on controlling the quality of the Mr. Beast burger customer experience and product. This despite numerous objections by Mr. Beast, whose complaints about quality fell on deaf ears. The lawsuit also claiming the company repeatedly used Mr. Beast's name, image, and likeness without approval. And so far, as of recording this, virtual dining concepts has declined to give comments to multiple news outlets. But as far as how this legal battle is going to play out, we're going to keep our eyes on it. Though, I got to pass the question out to you. What are your thoughts? What's your experience been with Mr. Beast Burger, or really any ghost kitchen? And if you've been buying it for a while, have you noticed the quality changing? And then we need to talk about the so-called doomsday mom, Lori Vallow Daybell. Or she's this 50-year-old Idaho mom whose life took a strange turn in 2018, because that's reportedly when she met Chad Daybell, a self-published author of doomsday fiction loosely based on Mormon teachings. And he seemingly warped her mind with the most insane ideas, not least that she was a goddess sent down to usher in the biblical apocalypse. With the couple since being linked to an entity called the Parent of People, which aims to ready people for the second coming of Jesus Christ, according to its website. And getting even weirder, Lori's former friend testified that Lori believed that evil spirits can turn people into zombies by taking their bodies, and that her kids were zombies, saying that Lori believed that the only way to get rid of the evil spirit was to kill the body. So when two of Lori's kids, 7-year-old JJ and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan, went missing in fall of 2019, people got worried. With a nationwide search for the children being launched, leading investigators to scrutinize other recent deaths, like that of Tammy Daybell, Chad's wife of 30 years who suspiciously died just 2 weeks before he married Lori, with her death initially thought to be from natural causes, but an autopsy showed that she was asphyxiated. And it was later revealed that Chad had actually bumped up her insurance policy just a month before she died. Then he saw attention focus on the killing of Lori's previous husband, Charles Vallow, earlier that year, with her brother shooting him in that case, but claiming that it was in self-defense and then dying apparently of natural causes before he could ever be charged. And so it was starting to look like Lori and Chad somehow orchestrated the killings of their previous spouses and then did something with the kids. Sure enough, when police excavated Chad's yard in the summer of 2020, they found the children's bodies buried, burned, and mutilated. But just like with Tammy's death, the murder of these kids appeared to involve money, the couple collecting social security checks after their deaths. So Lori was charged with multiple counts of murder, but her defense attorney claimed that it was actually her brother and husband who were responsible for the murders, by saying it wasn't her and that she just got sucked up into Chad's weird apocalyptic beliefs, saying that he told her they had actually been married in previous lives, saying that she was a sexual goddess who was meant to help him save the world by gathering 144,000 followers so Jesus could return. But ultimately, the evidence was overwhelming and Lori was convicted back in May. And the reason we're talking about it now is that her sentence came down yesterday. The victim's family also got a chance to pour out their grief in front of her for the first time.
You are a liar, an adulteress, and a murderer instead of a good night's sleep. Tammy was brutally executed in her own bed. It was taken from us by murdering thieves. JJ and Tylee could have been with us living happy lives. Instead, she took all that away, all because she is a money-hungry, power-mongering monster.
And then, at the very end, Lori gave a 10-minute statement, and it went about as you'd expect.
I've had many communications with Jesus Christ, the Savior of this world, and our heavenly parents. I've had many angelic visitors have come and communicated with me and even manifested themselves to me. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world.
Now, with the sentencing, there was some debate about whether her mental health was a mitigating factor, with a diagnosis from back in February stating that she suffers from delusional disorder and hyper-religiosity and an unspecified personality disorder with histrionic and narcissistic features, but the judge here said her crimes were so severe that it didn't matter. He gave her 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. As far as Chad, he's currently awaiting trial on the same murder charges, and this is the so-called Doomsday Mom has gotten her own Netflix documentary series and a Lifetime movie. And then, any of you focus on getting your business off the ground, creating a place to share your homemade goods, or even a personal blog, I got a great solution for it, and it comes from, and I want to thank the fantastic sponsor of today's show, Squarespace. You know, I've been partnering with Squarespace for years now, and I have to say, it's so easy. There's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade ever. And creating a beautiful website with Squarespace's Fluid Engine is so easy. You just drag things where you like, no coding necessary. And if you need a starting point, Squarespace has a bunch of great professional templates. Also, with an online shop from Squarespace, you can sell virtually anything, physical, digital, or service product. You can even sell custom merch easily. Squarespace handles all the production and shipping. Plus, with Squarespace, you get access to all their marketing tools and analytics and their award-winning customer care team via email or live chat 24/7. So go check it out, see why so many others love it, see why you're gonna love it, and start your free trial today over at squarespace.com/Phil. And when you realize you love it, just make sure you enter in offer code Phil to get 10% off your first purchase. And then Taco Bell's now getting sued by a man in New York because el hombre quería Taco Bell, pero ellos le dieron muy poca carne. Or to put it another way, he felt like your mother, or she wasn't getting the meat that she needed. With this man filing a class action lawsuit against Taco Bell, accusing them of false advertising, saying that the company overstates the amount of meat or filling in many of their menu items, including the Crunchwrap Supreme, by at least double. The lawsuit also saying the company's actions are especially problematic given the rising costs due to inflation. And read it. Taco Bell advertises larger portions of food to steer consumers to their restaurants for their meals and away from competitors that more fairly advertise the size of their menu items, unfairly diverting millions of dollars in sales that would have gone to competitors. And the suit is looking for the court to prevent Taco Bell from selling the items until the advertising is correct, as well as to provide compensation for anyone who purchased one of the affected items on or before July 31st of 2020. Now, as of recording, Taco Bell has yet to release a comment, but what also feels important to know is this is just the latest in a string of lawsuits regarding fast food restaurants' claims regarding their menu items, with Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King all being sued last year over the size of their cheeseburger, along with Buffalo Wild Wings being sued over their boneless wings being made with breast meat instead of actual wing meat. And all of that in addition to the lawsuit I'm going to file against Taco Bell because I was an emotional eater last week and I have had Taco Bell pretty much every night. My body is not used to those sodium levels anymore, and I think I've jumped up 7 pounds in a week. I'm like the most bloated man in a 10-mile radius. And it's also somehow Taco Bell's fault that I use 8 fire packets on a single burrito. And then the government just investigated itself for a crime it reportedly didn't even know it committed. So back in April, the Times reported that a contractor had purchased and deployed a hacking tool made by the controversial Israeli hacking firm NSO for use by the U.S. government. That being a geolocation tool that can covertly track mobile phones around the world without the phone user's knowledge or consent. And according to the contractor, the government could test, evaluate, and even deploy it against targets of its choosing in Mexico, which would be alarming enough, but to make matters worse, the Biden administration had put NSO on a Commerce Department blacklist just 5 days earlier, declaring the firm, whose hacking tools have been used by governments to spy on political dissidents, journalists, and activists, and national security threat. Now, in response to the Times' report, the White House was like, what? We've never heard of this contract until now. So it tasked the FBI with finding out which agency bought it. And now, the Bureau has come back with the answer itself. And this is like if my wife came to me and she was like, we gotta find out who ate the last of the donuts. And I'm like, yeah, we definitely do. Right on it. Because the FBI reportedly hired the contractor to track suspected drug smugglers and fugitives in Mexico. The Bureau also claimed that it was unaware the firm was using the spyware, instead believing it was relying on in-house tools. The official saying that once the FBI discovered in late April that the contractor had used the spying tool on its behalf, Director Christopher Wray terminated the contract. But with this, some unanswered questions include, why did the FBI hire this contractor, which has been authorized by the Bureau to purchase a different NSO tool for intel gathering in the past? Or why was there apparently so little oversight on this company's operation? Or perhaps most urgent, have other government agencies worked with this contract? And that last question is very important because sources told the Times that cell phone numbers in Mexico were targeted in 2023, far longer than the FBI claimed the spyware was used. So I don't know, guys. I'm starting to think maybe we can't trust every aspect of the government and or FBI. Something fishy might be going on. Hear me out. I know it sounds crazy. You think that I'm Looney Tunes. This apparently is what sarcasm sounds like in my brain. Anyway, while we wait to find out more, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. And that virtual healthcare very much seems to be the future, but the question is, at what cost? With a big part of that question focusing on privacy. Right, that's because Amazon announced today that they're adding video visits to their virtual healthcare clinic nationwide after it was delayed last month. Which we didn't know, they actually launched the Amazon clinic last fall as a way for users to connect with healthcare providers about common conditions like sinus infections or pink eye. And so as of today, users in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. can access Amazon clinic via video visits, and in 34 states, users can access text message consultation. And it's also important to note here that it's not actually Amazon that's providing the telemedicine. Instead, they just created the platform and partnered with telemedicine providers like Hello Alpha and SteadyMD. Well, they don't accept insurance. The average cost of a video visit is only $75, which is largely cheaper than many in-person doctor's appointments, so it's easy to see the appeal. However, like was hinted, there are some serious privacy concerns. Back in June, Senators Peter Welch and Elizabeth Warren sent a letter to Amazon CEO Andy Jassy regarding reporting that in order to use the service, users had to agree to give Amazon complete access to their consumer health information. Customers have to agree that Amazon may share their data, and that data is no longer protected by HIPAA. So in the letter, the senators asked Amazon to detail whether personal data is being used to promote or sell Amazon products and services, as well as asking them to be more transparent about their data practices. With Welch saying in a statement to Politico, Amazon is asking patients to turn over a ton of personal data to use their service. It can't be that big tech companies can ask for a treasure trove of personal information to let you use their services, but face no accountability for what they'll do with it. And in response to that letter, Amazon said that they do comply with HIPAA and all other laws and regulations regarding healthcare, as well as claiming that they share the data with healthcare providers to ensure the patient gets the necessary care. Then, a week after that letter was sent, Amazon delayed the video expansion of its virtual care service, so they denied that this was connected. However, Politico reported that they actually received an email detailing the pause on the launch was due to concerns raised by Welch and Warren. And in a joint statement after the delay, the senator said that they hope this is, quote, a sign that Amazon has taken our concerns about data collection and use practices seriously. Though now the launch has arrived and very few questions have been answered, which is also why we should expect more questions to now be thrown their way. And that is where today's daily dive into the news is going to end. But for more news you need to know, you can click the tab right here, or I got those links in the description down below. And of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Which ancient culture was way more picked up than most people know? What I always thought horrific was the imperial Chinese practice of 9 degrees, as in 9 degrees of relation. Say that someone seriously offends the emperor. The emperor then orders that not just that person, but everyone related to that person within 9 degrees of relationship is to be executed. Grandparents, parents, siblings, spouse, children, cousins, more cousins, more cousin, concubines and their children, babies in the cradle, old people who were bedridden, all their household servants, probably their in-laws too. Later emperors were more humane and simply executed the main offender, then sentenced all those people to exile, a forced death march of thousands of miles, where a few survivors had to eke out a living doing hard labor. Feudal China was super into burying people alive. Kenshi, the first emperor responsible for the unification of China, upon his death had 70,000 concubines, servants, and workers forcibly interred alongside him. The terracotta army was constructed only because murdering all the soldiers as well was an option. They later renounced that practice under the Confucians. There is a Chinese idiom for the origin of evil, attributed to Mencius Confucius, that literally means may the first person who made terracotta figurines bear no offspring. Mencius Confucius was denouncing the use of terracotta figurines, since it is a substitute for human sacrifices and underlies a desire for which, edit, Mencius Confucius thought the mere desire for human sacrifices is evil, and even the compromise of using terracotta figures is unacceptable. So wait, you say no terracotta because we must sacrifice real humans, or no terracotta because really you want to be sacrificing real humans, and this simulacra hides that evil just under the surface. The second one. I'm listening to a history of China podcast. Chinese history is insane. So many murdered people, it would make the Romans blush. 3 kingdoms history, like 2 million people died in this minor border town skirmish. Meanwhile, medieval European history is like King John rode to town with 20 of his best knights and waged war against the town's baron and his 30 peasant fighter. The reality of a castle under siege, the movie version, is also fun. Movie. A city surrounded by siege engines, camps on all sides, 1,000s of men scaling the walls. Reality. 80 blokes are spread across 2 free camps around the castle, whose walls are defended by 35. After a year or so, the invaders might finally complete a single siege regime, but more likely the siege gear is limited to ladders and patience. Getting in and out under the cover of dark is fairly risk-free, so supplies keep coming. In some places, the peasants aren't participants and use the front gate as on any other day, where their job brings them to the local lord's administrative center. This is funny in reverse. I'm so used to growing up with Chinese lips, where a small force is counted in the 10,000s. One. And then when I read about the Crusades and 1,000 knights were considered an impressive army, that's when I went like, why, honestly, one of my favorite never saw it coming historical facts is that for all the brutality of the Ming dynasty, what ultimately brought them down was a preteen addicted to pornography. I feel most Chinese brutalities have something crazy behind it. For example, the Taiping Rebellion of 1850, which caused the deaths of 20-30 million people over 14 years, while some estimates go up to 100 million deaths. The Taiping Rebellion was launched by a guy called Hong Maxuka, who was certain he was the brother of Jesus Christ. He gathered a large following and declared himself as the heavenly king of the heavenly kingdom of peace, and launched a rebellion against the Qing dynasty. You know what's even crazier about Hong Maxuka is that the way he relays God's message is he pretends to have a seizure in front of everyone, and then suddenly gets possessed by God to give command to his men. His second in command soon figured out Hong's gimmicks, decided he also wanted to be a God's messenger, and faked a seizure in front of everyone too, and started to give God's orders. Hong was obviously pissed about it, but couldn't tell everyone without giving himself up. So both of them took turns getting possessed by God and relaying God's command to the men for a while. This would make a great key and peel scapegoat. Are you sure about that? I heard that the Ming Emperor was having an affair with the wife of one of his generals, and he deployed the generals with Great War of China at the frontier in an attempt to get rid of him. But to get revenge on the Emperor, this general led the Manchurian army through one of the gates at the big wall. The Manchurians eventually overthrew the Ming dynasty and set up the Qing dynasty. Is this some tall tale of intrigue? I'm too lazy to look up and read all the history right now. What, please? I need this knowledge in its entirety. I need to preface this by stating you probably shouldn't put too much stock in this, as lying about the sexual practices of monarchs is incredibly common. But I believe it was Yingzong, and the story goes that the eunuchs basically distracted him with pictures of titties so they could rob the place. Blind and some of his military fuck-ups were responsible for laying the groundwork for a king takeover. There might be a grain of truth to it, as it wouldn't be the first case of a Chinese emperor having horrible consequences from being exposed to sex too early. Though in this case, the eunuchs were probably the bigger problem than the poor, as involvement in politics was considered one of the biggest mistakes of the Ming Dynasty. It wouldn't be the first case of a Chinese emperor having horrible consequences from being exposed to sex too early. I know about Gu Yi, but which pre-Ming emperor was exposed to sex too early? This has piqued my curiosity. How does one force 70,000 people to be buried alive? You would think they would have considered revolting rather than just resigning themselves to their fates. Yes, I'm sure the soldiers would have threatened them, but you would think that such a large number of people could at least muster up a decent fight by keeping the army alive. Forget that. Imagine your population being so big and you caring so little that you could send 3 villages worth of people to die after the guy that ordered his dead cold and not thinking of what. I might want those concubines, servants, and workers around. Fuck them. If you go against the wishes of the previous emperor, the people might get the idea they can go against yours while you're still alive. Tradition is a hell of a drug when it comes to power structure. Here's what's really going to blow your mind. That's not even the largest amount ever returned. That honor goes to Yuan. I'd have to look up his name to get it exactly right, but he forcibly buried 200,000 enemy soldiers alive. Feudal China had that shit figured out. Edit. Looked it up. I flipped his name backwards. It's Xiang Yu. The ancient Assyrians built a vast empire. The empire reached its height during the Neo-Assyrian era from 911 BC to the fall of its largest city, Nineveh, in 612 BC. The Assyrian dominion stretched from Egypt to modern-day India, controlled diverse countries. To quash any uprising in these conquered areas, Assyrian leaders utilized extreme violence. Their horrific campaigns were celebrated in stone reliefs, festooning the palace walls. They created tablets containing every secret punishment the Assyrian army carried out. They cut off the limbs, gouged out the eyes, and then left those poor victims to roam around. Those poor people serve as a living reminder of the Assyrians' cruelty. The Assyrians were proud of the mass execution. The victim's skin was hung on the city wall. The brutality of the Assyrians was extreme, even for the ancient standards of cruelty. Assyrian life, princessy garden reading poetry, musician playing harp nearby, fruit trees decorated with severed heads, with strange fruit. This is actually the backstory of the story of Jonah. He was trying to run away because God told him to go preach and pastor to the Assyrians. He didn't want to because they were horrible, and God was like, when I say love anyone, I mean anyone. And then God makes a little vine kind of sit under, and when God sends a worm to kill it, Jonah throws a big fit. And God's like, come on, how many could you possibly be about a vine that just grew yesterday? And Jonah literally says that he's so angry he could die. Jonah's always the most extra. Jonah is definitely up there as one of the most relatable people. Read this as original trilogy. The entire book of Nahum in the Bible, one of the shortest books in the Bible, consists of nothing but oracles of condemnations against Assyria and its capital, Nineveh, and prophecies what they do, resulting from God's judgment against them for their proof. Here's an example. One woe to the bloody city, all full of lies and plunder, no end to the prey, two the crack of the whip and rumble of the wheel, galloping horse and bounding carrion, 3 horsemen charging, flashing sword and ancient spear, hosts of slain, heaps of corpses, dead bodies without end. They stumble over the bodies, fall and all, the covetous worries of the prostitute, graceful and of deadly charms, who betrays nations with her worries, and peoples with her charms. 5, behold, I am against you, declares Jehovah of hosts, and will lift up your sleeves of your face. And I will make nations look at your nakedness and kingdoms at your shame. 6, I will throw filth at you, and treat you with contempt, and make you a spectacle. 7, and all who look at you will shrink from you and say, wasted is Nineveh, who will grieve for her? Where shall I seek comfort in Assyria? Where shall I seek comfort in Assyria? 18, your shepherds are asleep, O king of Assyria, your nobles slumber, your people are scattered on the mountains, with none to gather. 19, there is no ease in your hurt, your wound is grievous. All who hear the news about you clap their hands over you, for upon whom has not come your unceasing evil. In the period of the divided kingdom, where the Israelites are divided into a northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, and a southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, the Assyrians invaded and conquered the kingdom of Israel, and exiled its people, resettling them in other territories in order to wipe out their identity. These are the lost tribes of Israel. Other vanquished peoples were also resettled in Israel. But in conquering Israel, Assyria was just as typically cruel as they were to the other peoples they conquered. They attempted to conquer Judah as well during the reign of Hezekiah, but they only laid waste dozens of other cities, but they did not end up conquering Jerusalem. There is a relief of the Assyrian king Sennacherib's campaign in the British Museum made by the Assyrians, commemorating how they laid waste to the Judean town of Lachish and brutalized its inhabitants with vicious tortures, sealing them alive and pulling them apart and other barbaric acts. One of my favourite moments from Dan Carlin's renowned hardcore history podcast is when he reads the account of a scribe who is extremely 100 to 200 years after the decline of the city. Although its former splendor is evident, the city is fallen into ruin, and the current residents, a shanty house outside the city centre, wonder as to who it might have been that was able to build such a mighty city. Or what the city may have been called, all that blushed to be forgotten entirely only a few years later. I recall hearing the same story around Greece Sparta, when a visitor asked the locals where the ruins of some former cities came from, and nobody knew. It's common. Also, how was discovered. An Italian was travelling in the area, and the guides led them to a hill to camp out of the wind. The Italian man noticed mud brick walls using bitumen as mortar. He also found many inscribed tablets just lying on the sand. When asked, it turned out this was not news to the guide. To him, it was just an abandoned settlement like all the others in the area, unimportant. All the others? Asked the Italian. And the guy casually said that all hills along the river are ruins. Essentially, how the wider world learned about the Sumerians' existence. Xenophon, the Greek general, saw the ruins as his army was escaping from Persia after being on the wrong side of a civil war. They had to trek across the entire empire through hostile territory to get home. It's the inspiration for the 70s movie The Warrior. Fun fact. In the TV show Archer, the character Pam has a stanza from Byron's poem, The Destruction of Sennacherib, tattooed across her back. It's about the slaughter of an Assyrian army, perhaps the most badass tattoo in fiction. Pam has a stanza from Byron's poem, The Destruction of Seneca, tattooed across her back for the angel of death, spreading wings of the blast, and wreathed in the face of the foe as he passed. And the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts went once but forever. Still, it also gives context to why Jonah was so reluctant to go to Nineveh. He hated them for what they had done, and is angry that God could be merciful even to them. Exactly what I was going to post. That's some fucking huge missing context. I believe the Achaemenids, Persians, overthrew them and decided that it's probably a better idea to make your subjects happy instead of afraid. Cyrus let Jews return to their homeland after centuries of exile, and that's why Persians, Assyrians, no wonder they called him Cyrus the Great. I really wonder if this is actually true. It sounds like a logistical nightmare, not even mentioning why his successor would be fine with losing so much loyal manpower. I'm fascinated by them both, but Persians would have been more pleasant to live under, for sure. It is a shame that Persians are often vilified. Even by modern standards, Persian Empire was very multicultural and quite a pleasant empire to live in. If one traveled to ancient Rome, some 5,000 crucified rotting corpses would guide you the way. I'm really glad we invented sign. It is a shame that Persians are often vilified. Even by modern standards, Persian Empire was very multicultural and quite a pleasant empire to live in. Sparta. People in general remember them as just being these badass super soldiers, but don't know how Spartan society was built on draconic slavery and institutional pedophilia. Sparta has to have the best historical power of any peoples ever. A tyrannical slave state with a mediocre military record has gone down in popular memory as super soldiers that fight for freedom. Goes to show you how history changes over time. When we got to the German death camps in Brienne, the US had the mindset to get the media there, have pictures taken, and film it as well. And they said that was appealing to see what was done here, and because of time, people would deny it ever happened. And they were right, even with the photos, video, and writings about it. It's very unfortunate. It reminds me of something I read on Stormfront many years ago. One of the guys there was appealing to the rest to drop the Holocaust denial, saying, "My grandfather liberated Dachau. He saw a pile of corpses with his own eyes. The Holocaust happened." One of the other people in the thread rebutted with, "Oh, really? Did he personally witness every one of them being led into the gas chambers and the switch being thrown? Sheesh, if that's your line of reasoning, you might as well deny that anything you haven't personally witnessed happened, or even exists at all. Sheesh, if that's your line of reasoning, you might as well deny that anything you haven't personally witnessed happened, or even exists at all. There are a disturbingly high number of people like that. Also the Spartans, the soldiers in 300, had to murder one of their slaves to become adults. In the movie, this was portrayed as an epic fight against a woman. 300 has done some heavy pull for Sparta, that's for sure. The Ptolemaic rulers of Egypt were 10 generations of absolutely fucked, bookended by 2 actually good leaders. Ptolemy and Cleopatra, their family history would make for a fun, trashy soap opera full of backstabbing, famicide, and a truly appalling amount of incest, as they spent 200 years running Egypt into the ground. Too bad it was all real. And yes, Cleopatra was one of history's few inbreeding success stories. She managed to get all the best traits of her insane family, and none of the bad one. If you've got a little time, listening to Blue at Ost lose his mind, trying to describe the Ptolemaic kingdom is hilarious. The Ptolemaic gene pool made the Habsburgs look like the Pacific. The Ptolemaic dynasty had less genetic diversity than the average Crusader King's players dynasty. So much inbreeding Cleopatra got the pure-blooded trait. The family tree's helps. Igor, Company 6, King 6. So Cleopatra Selene, whose mother and father were siblings, had a daughter with Brother X and a son with Brother X. Those children married when the girl still had a child with her Brother X. This child in turn married the child between Brother X. This child in turn married the child between Brother X and another sister. And 2 of their children produced the famous Cleopatra V. Did I get that right? Not necessarily ancient, but the Iroquois. They had many rituals of torture for prisoners of war, including ripping out nails cutting off fingers, followed by forcing them to run the gauntlet, and then, if they survived, they would be scalped and burned alive. The real correct answer is that every group of human beings was, by our current moral standards, absolutely brutal. Nothing the Iroquois did here was unique or particularly worse than many other groups. I just haven't seen anyone mention them in this thread yet, so I figured I would. I was recently stunned by the amount of atrocities the Japanese Empire has done. Mutilation of babies, forcing kids to rape their mothers, putting mothers into chambers with boiling grounds to test them if they would put their kids on the ground so that they don't get their feet scorched by stepping on their bodies carrying baby corpses on their necks. Not to mention carving a hole in the belly of pregnant women to rip the fetuses cold-blooded and then murdering the fetus while a mother is sleeping. There are literally no words in any dictionary to describe what they did. When people think about the atrocities of World War I, they usually think about mental and horrific experiments the Nazis did. A lot of people don't know that the Japanese did a huge amount of horrific and brutal experiment. 731, for those who want to really horrify themselves. I read about that. Absolutely horrible. Shows the depravity of human behavior at its worst. Maybe in the West, the rest of us in East and Southeast Asia remember what they did. Sorry, you're right. Mine is a Western perspective, and we were taught extensively about what Germany did, but I don't think I ever even heard about Nazi until college, and got away with it for the most part. America granted immunity to the leaders of doctors that performed these experiments in exchange for the information they accumulated for the research. But they used to take captured us Marines and cut off their Muslim tattoos and force feed the flesh to them. And they would force feed them to them, jump on their stomachs until they creeped it all up, and then start the process again. They would cut off their genitals and shove them down their throats. They would torture and mutilate them. They would use them for bayonet practice, but purposely avoided vital organs, so they would suffer multiple stabbings. This goes on and on. Their bodies were left out for their comrades to find later. Japan's horrific atrocities have forever affected their relationship with the rest of Asia. The horrors they committed through the 30s and 40s cannot be understated. My grandfather fought them in New Guinea and near disowned my dad when he came home in a Japanese car once. I was about to make a very similar comment. My grandfather fought in the Pacific Theatre and wouldn't buy a Japanese anything. We weren't allowed to watch anime in his house house or play Nintendo. He bought a Subaru Outback because he thought it was an Australian car, and he had to think that he died rather than tell them. He came around to buying German stuff in his later years, but he was adamant that Germany had paid for what they'd done and made their country safe for Jews and minorities, and Japan hadn't done the same. He was never racist, probably because he knew Japanese. And the German Americans are often in the US because they were fleeing their country's conditions. This grandpa, my pap, was my mom's step. Dad, my dad's dad, was German, and pap knew the story, so I'm sure that helped, but it strongly broke up. Anything from any country he perceived as not deterring enough for their actions during war. My grandma was always a bit racist about the Japanese for what was done to her brother. He came home from a POW camp emaciated beyond recognition and tormented so hard he was a very cruel man for the rest of his life. Was involved in some nasty British empire conflicts in the late 40s and 50s. What you would today call black ops. Probably continued the cycle of cruelty, some of them. Dude, how do you bring up the atrocities of Japan without mentioning comfort women? The soldiers lined up to rape them repeatedly each day, performed hysterectomies on them with no anesthetic when they inevitably got pregnant, tattooed their bodies, brutalized them on their whim, killed them in horrific ways for so much as verbalizing a desire to leave, forced the others at gunpoint to watch these prolonged executions and consume the bodies, killed them in horrific ways anyways, just for fun. And to this day, the Japanese government insists these women, estimated between 50,000 to 100,000 abducted women and young teenage girls, were volunteers. Why such a huge range? Well, when people are murdered for funsies, forced to cannibalize the dead, and prone to hurling themselves off cliffs, a ton of evidence is destroyed, and it gets really hard to narrow it down. Watched a documentary on YouTube about a Korean comfort woman. She was 15 and told she was going to work in a factory, which is why her mother encouraged her to go. When the doctors at the facility found out her age, they discussed if she was too young for the work, but ultimately decided she was old enough to comfort the soldiers. She tried to kill herself by drinking an entire bottle of alcohol, but all it did was tear her stomach. She was an adult by the time she finally got back to Korea. When she worked up the ability to tell her mother what happened, her mother had a heart attack. Like many comfort women, she doesn't want Japan's monetary compensation. She wants a sincere apology from the Japanese love, and the Japanese love acknowledging the harm they did to her and others, along with a statement admitting to falsely claiming they were all volunteers and were prostitutes. This was a comment that closed the tab for me. Fuck this shit. Japanese Empire were among the worst in history. But the Imperial Japan isn't really an ancient culture. Most ancient cultures were way more cruel than people know or imagine. Just capital punishment is a great example. It's not that you did something bad and we will kill you. Oh no. It's you did something wrong and we will torture you in unspeakable ways. Death is not the goal. Here it's just a byproduct. History is the worst. People died more easily. You had to make a statement to set an example. And boy, were they creative. Spartan society was fueled entirely by slavery. Massive slave population, actual citizen force, pretty small and useless, at anything but soldiery, according to Aristotle. The Spartans knew full well the slaves could snap and revolt at any time, and they outnumbered the masters so hugely they could possibly win. So the Spartans had a policy of keeping their slaves constantly in fear. They even had a public holiday where they massacred slaves just to break their will. A lot of Pacific cultures practice cannibalism. Some still do in Papua New Guinea. But Maori here in New Zealand did in some tribes as well. So the worst insult you could use in the Maori language, Kokua, means to boil your head, harking back to when people were boiled and eaten. Genghis Khan and the Mongolians of steppe were absolutely ruthless and efficient. Entire unknown civilizations are reportedly wiped out by them with zero trace of their culture intact. Just fields of bones saying something big was there. There was at least one incident of a drunken Mongolian post-raid, demanding a group of runaways remain still while he stumbled off to find his sword and killed them. And they did out of fear for what would happen had they not there was an instance of a relatively small equal element of Mongolians. Were sent over some mountains in modern-day Russia, Ish region, just to see what over there, stumbled onto an entire joint nation army, and nursed them all conquering the whole damn place. The Khans were a hard people. Oddly enough, though, they were relatively progressive for their time. Once you knew your people were conquered, they didn't really care what you did for as long as you paid your troops. They can protect you from outside raid. It's just to know the whole getting massacred and the looking part deep in source. Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast off on the Khans, and inevitably there was one instance of a unique that came back to mind. So being the progressive conquerors they were, they participated in honour their troops and gods of their enemies. In one such instance, they sacked and captured a host of nobles who believed it was unholy to spill high blood. In response, the Mongolians decided to honour their traditions, and rather than cut them to pieces, they laid the nobles' flat, built a dance floor on top of them, and partied like hell while the nobles were crushed underneath. No blood was spilled. Once you and your people were conquered, they didn't really care what you did smoke believed as long as you paid your tributes. I've heard it speculated that this is why they were able to grow to be the world's largest empire. It's thought that people were less likely to stage revolt since they could keep speaking their language, practice their religion, have their own government, and stuff like that. Where other empires largely sought to assimilate people to their borders, the Mongolians didn't care as long as you paid up. Or else, the Mongols were less of an empire who conquered a ruled, and more of a horde that turned out slaughtered half your folk, and then left you to your own devices unless you stopped paying tributes. They would come back and kill the other half. I know people will be surprised by hearing about the Aztecs due to human sacrifice for war reasons, but oh boy, it was way worse. If I recall correctly, there was a moment of betrayal that happened from, and I chose to remember it, when they decided to make peace. Killing a princess, like Frigga, by removing her beating heart, and then inviting her father to an ominous meeting showing a boy wearing her skin and clothes. For those in the comments trying to say this is a distorted view of Mesoamerican painted by the empires that crushed them, why can't you just accept that, yes, their genocide is horrific, but they weren't angels either. It is not hard to see both things as horrible and disgusting. This very thread is proof humans everywhere can be horrible. That just makes them human. The Romans Romans are looked up to this day for their achievements, and you still have Crassus making their soldiers collectively stab their own as punishment for losing to the slaves they would later crucify and torture. You have Japanese monks have a heartbreaking last stand with guns against their most famous conqueror, and you can still read sources about how they had a whole romance with Greek monks and prostitutes, which was seen as perfectly normal at the time. History is full of incredible people and incredibly horrible people. It gets so much worse. The Spanish were able to recruit the help of many other people groups when overthrowing the Aztecs because they were so hated by the people they subjugated. They often used these subjugated people groups practically as livestock, collecting large numbers of them to be ritually sacrificed to their gods in incredibly barbaric ways, wiping out their beating hearts while they were alive, skinning them, and other sacrifices, such as for the dedication of temples, involved extremely high volumes of sacrifices and appear to have been done by beheading the victims. The dedication of the Pyramid Temple at Tenochtitlan in 1486 involved the sacrifice of 80,400 prisoners over the course of 4 days. At that pace, 15 victims would have to be killed per minute. Lower estimates place the number of sacrificed victims at 10,000. 4 altars were set up at the top of the pyramid to carry out multiple simultaneous sacrifices, facing each of the sides of the pyramid. The victims' bodies were tossed down the sides of the pyramid as human blood ran down its steps. They sacrificed children to their own god in the air to ensure that they would keep making rain. The tears of children were thought to bring the rain, so they would torture the children ahead of sacrificing them to their rain god, telling them to make them shed as many tears as possible. Wikipedia's entry on Aztec human sacrifice says, Tlaloc is the god of rain, water, and earthly fertility. 43, the Aztecs believed that if sacrifices were not supplied for Tlaloc, rain would not come, their crops would not flourish, and they would suffer diseases caused by Tlaloc would infest. The village, 44 archaeologists have found the remains of at least 42 children sacrificed to Tlaloc at the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan. Many of the children suffered from serious injury before their death. They would have to have been in significant pain, as Tlaloc required the tears of the young as part of the sacrifice. The priests made the children cry during their way to immolation. A good omen that Tlaloc would wet the earth in the rainy season. 45 Wikipedia's entry on Tlaloc, in the section on child sacrifice rituals, says the Atlacohorla festivals were celebrated from 12 February until 3 March. Dedicated to the Tlaloc, this Vaintina involved the sacrifice of children on sacred mountaintops, like Mount Tlaloc. This form of human sacrifice was not only specific but necessary in the eyes of the Aztec. The children were beautifully adorned, dressed in the style of Tlaloc and the Tlaloc. The children were chosen by the community, and although this selection came with honor, being selected came with great responsibility. Furthermore, these children were not usually of high social class. The festival of Tezostotli, 24 March, 12 April, similarly involved child sacrifice. During this festival, the children were sacrificed in game. The flayed skins of sacrificial victims that had been worn by priests for the last 20 days were taken off and placed in these dark magical caverns. The irony is that the main allies of the Spanish, Tlaxcala, worked much better. A lot of groups in Mesoamerica liked their child sacrifice. The Inca would send them up the mountains to freeze to death. The Inca weren't Mesoamericans though. Anyway, a lot of South Americans, not only the rulers of Inca Empire, were big on human sacrifice. Chico, or Jin, Nazca, basically, whichever civilization was dominant in any given period of time, they all killed people for their gods, often including children. The last case when a child was sacrificed due to native religion was in freaking 1960 after a massive earthquake. An Aztec holiday ritual involves some of the most fucked up practices I've heard of. What's worse with that story of the princess is they thought they were honoring the princess by skinning her. It wasn't meant to be malicious. In 1323, they asked the new ruler of Culhuacan, Aquicomatl, for his daughter in order to make her the goddess Yaojiwatl. Unknown to the king, the Mexica actually planned to sacrifice her. The Mexica believed that by doing this, the princess would join the gods as a deity. As the story goes, during a festival dinner, a priest came out wearing her flayed skin as part of the ritual. Upon seeing this, the king and the people of Culhuacan were horrified and expelled the Mexican. We'll never know if it's a true story or not, but the Aztec did do some fucked up stuff. But seeing as our sources are the Aztec themselves, hard to distinguish fact from legend, and the conquistadors who know. It's not particularly ancient, and the actions aren't as fucked up as many of what is listed here, but I find absolutely insane that East India Company, a private company, ended up accidentally colonizing India. The idea that a company that exported tea would end up with a standing army is some real sign of dystopian shit. An Aztec holiday ritual involves some of the most fucked up practices I've heard of. What's worse with that story of the princess is they thought they were honoring the princess by skinning her. It wasn't meant to be malicious. In 1323, they asked the new ruler of Culhuacan, Aquicomatl, for his daughter in order to make her the goddess Yaojiwatl. Unknown to the king, the Mexica actually planned to sacrifice her. The Mexica believed that by doing this, the princess would join the gods as a deity. As the story goes, during a festival dinner, a priest came out wearing her flayed skin as part of the ritual. Upon seeing this, the king and the people of Culhuacan were horrified and expelled the Mexican. We'll never know if it's a true story or not, but the Aztec did do some fucked up stuff. But seeing as our sources are the Aztec themselves, hard to distinguish fact from legend, and the conquistadors, who knows? What's always come to my noodle is imagining all of the horrible, awful, no good stuff that went down before recorded history. The most ancient civilization we have information on the fake is the Sumerians. Also, supposedly, the Egyptians are dated as far back as well, 4000 BCC, so 6,000 years ago. That's all we've got of recorded human history. 6,000 years. Humans have been around for way longer than 6,000 years. The first modern humans, or Homo sapiens, date back 200,000 years. That's 30, freaks as long as recorded human civilization. Imagine the type of ships that went down. It wasn't just a bunch of random monkey-looking people hanging out by themselves. They absolutely got banded up into tribes, and you know they went to war with each other. They could have built entire civilizations and burnt them down repeatedly. 200,000 years is a lot of years to get up to shenanigans. Yeah, no. And it's completely lost to time. Just poof, gone, as if it never happened. Which is honestly what will happen to all human endeavor. On the timescale of the universe, we're all just a fart in the wind. No one will remember squat about this period of human history 200,000 years from now, and what they do remember will be completely distorted from the truth. Samurai and feudal Japan. People like to imagine the samurai as some kind of noble order built around the belief that honor and service were to be held above all. Samurai didn't give half a sideways fuck about the common peasant. They were a blue-blood aristocracy that used their power and training to perpetuate a totalitarian regime that would make the House of Windsor blush. Some examples of the opposites that people like to gloss over showing disrespect to a samurai was cause for instant death, and disrespect could be something as simple as not bowing low and long enough. Oh, Mr. Old Rice Farm, does your back hurt from slaving in the field for your feudal lord? Well, tough shit, I don't care how loud your spine cracks when you touch your head to the ground for me. If you twitch, that a beheading, the code of battlefield honor, only really counted when the losing side put off just the right amount of fight. Not enough to be a problem, but you still had to do some pointless dying to keep from all being killed anyway. Example, older Nobunaga committed a genocide against the Iki monks because they had the audacity to not instigate when he showed up. After several long sieges, he burned the hilltop fortress of Ishiyama Hongan. G. Oda set fire to the mountain and blocked any escape, burning alive 20,000 men, women, and children. The idea that samurai hated firearms because they saw them as dishonorable or unsporting is bullshit. They hated them because they evened the playing field. Any peasant with the arquebus could kill any samurai before he even got his sword out, and that was not okay. They couldn't have their absolute martial superiority questioned, and especially by a weapon that didn't require years of special training, and more importantly, the free time to do that training, something your average rice farming peasant certainly didn't have. Ronin were not noble samurai seeking truth through walking the land, or whatever the fuck people believe now. They were dispossessed lords who were now turning to banditry against any peasant who dared to not support them with free food and lodging. They were the equivalent of a former SEAL team, 6-member walking the road with his weapon, who will kill you if you don't buy his lunch, let him sleep in your bed, fuck your wife, and then bid him adieu with a smile and call a thank you for your service. So yeah, samurai were aristocratic mass-murdering assholes. Edit. Just to make it a bit more clear, the Boshu War, which was waged at the start of Meiji Imperial Restoration, that pitted the samurai class against the new imperial court and standing army, was fought 100% on the samurai side to keep their protected class, the imperial court, even tried to compromise and offer them high-ranking government positions, but it wasn't enough. They still wanted to keep their place in Japanese society, and one of the stated rights they didn't want to lose was the right to carry swords in public for the purpose of protecting honor, i.e. killing the commoner on the spot if they perceived any disrespect. Also, the samurai forces suddenly didn't have an issue with guns once they started losing to ranks of peasants armed with them. Suddenly, the shogun forces were all about that firearm line. Edit. Lol. Apparently, the 12th century isn't ancient enough for some clowns. The ancient Phoenician Carthaginians had a child-killing cult. They thought that their gods needed children to be appeased. Other Canaanite Semitic peoples dropped this practice, depicted in the Tanakh, Bible's Old Testament, through the story of God sending a goat when Abraham was about to sacrifice his son. Although ancient Jews' annual ritualistic slaughter of thousands of animals is nothing to scoff at, murdering kids is obviously far worse. Even the Phoenicians' peers, contemporary cultural civilizations of the period, thought it to be a barbarous practice. Here's Plato on the subject. With us, for instance, human sacrifice is not legal, but unholy, whereas the Carthaginians perform it as a thing they account holy and legal, and that too, when some of them sacrifice even their own sons to Cronus, as I dare say you yourself have heard. In one notable case, during the late Sicilian Wars, Carthage itself was almost besieged and defeated. It got so bad Carthaginian civilians had to be pressed into the army instead of relying on their mercenary army. Carthage scraped by a victory at the Battle of White Tunis, but since it was so terrible, they thought the gods were punishing them. So in the aftermath of the battle, Carthaginians tried to appease the gods through, you guessed it, human sacrifice. 300 adults and 200 children were ritualistically murdered. Here is Diodorus Siculus describing the event. They also alleged that Cronus had turned against them, inasmuch as in former times they had been accustomed to sacrifice to this god, the noblest of their sons, but more recently, secretly buying and nurturing children, they had sent these to the sacrifice. And when an investigation was made, some of those who had been sacrificed were discovered to have been substituted by stealth. In their zeal to make amends for the omission, they selected 200 of the noblest children and sacrificed them publicly, and others, who were under suspicion, sacrificed themselves voluntarily, in number not less than 300. There was in the city a bronze image of Kronos, extending its hands, palms up and sloping towards the ground, so that each of the children, when placed thereon, rolled down and fell into a sort of gaping pit filled with fire. With fire. 10 million Africans died under the reign of King Leopold II of Belgium. Absolute horrific brutality. He belongs in the same category as Hitler, Stalin, and Pol Pot. Sorry, not very ancient, but his name doesn't come up in these discussions enough. Wasn't King Leopold also a sadistic pedophile? Many horror stories from his era. Ancient Greece. A lot of people imagine clean villas, people with white togas talking about arts and philosophy all day. The truth is that most people were dirt poor. Being born disabled or being born a girl could be a death sentence, and pedophilia was rampant among the rich. Also, a lot of their economy was based on slavery. Pedophilia being rampant among the rich powerful is a frighteningly common thing throughout history. Funnily enough, the Persian Empire was actually way better than it was portrayed. It was extremely open to different religions and were very advanced in civil liberty. When you really look at it, the Greeks were kind of the baddies in the wars between this empire. Even Alexander basically said that after conquering Persia, but because we get a lot of our information about the classic period by Greek and Roman writers, Persia was seen as a barbaric, tyrannical state. One time I visited Canada in 2004, and they poured maple syrup on pineapple pizza. Lord what? I'm a Canadian citizen, and have never seen someone put maple syrup on any kinds of pizza.
We did it.
Jake, I've never actually seen it. When I was watching Castlevania, I did some research where the Dracula myth comes from, and stumbled upon Vlad Tepes' Dracula, or by his nickname called Vlad the Impaler. They are not sure about the numbers, but you have to impale a lot of people to get that nickname. Carthaginians were apparently quite fond of burning their toddlers for shits and giggles. Okay, religious reasons. Kinda counterproductive, ain't it? Though it might be all Roman propaganda for all we know. All of them. We're genuinely a fucked up species. Aztecs were pretty messed up, but Babylonia. They left behind whole walls of sculpture depicting how many hundreds of thousands they killed for sport. I'm pretty sure it was worse when Neanderthals walked amongst us, but no written record. Finally, the good answer. The worst atrocities are the ones we don't know about because winners write history. There is a quote, if you read through history. The good guys always win. What are the odds? We like to think before the slave trade in these parts of Africa were all peaceful and great, but really they were already enslaving each other, and many larger kingdoms, like the Zulu and Dahomey, were oppressing the smaller one. What Spain did about 500 years ago with the Inquisition, it's nuts.
Yeah. Pretty fucking true. Beep. And get in here. And we're gonna become. Oh no. No, 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 no. Oh, fuck this, guys. I'm sorry. Oh. Copper alloy plates. Shit. Wanna boys? We're gonna need to change gears. I'm gonna move you guys. Too hard to do much. Over there. Crafting. Tools crafting.
Ready to go. So, this is Charlie, and what makes him special enough for me to make a video about him is the fact that he built this weird turbine without blades, which is super weird, because turbines tend to have blades. But anyway, before we talk about him, let's talk a little bit about turbines. This video was brought to you by Kenshi. This is a Hero's turbine, named after the first man to describe it in the 1st century AD. It's probably the first steam turbine ever built, and because of that, it operates on a very simple concept. Inside the structure you insert water that will be warmed up by the external flame. Once that water turns into steam, it has no other option but to escape through the tiny nozzles placed in the arms, arranged tangentially to the center of rotation. These arms act as micro rockets that propel the entire device around itself. Yeah, this turbine is not a great way of producing power, but it's a great way of demonstrating how reaction turbines work. Tiny rockets propelling stuff around itself. I should probably put that on a t-shirt. You've heard it here first. Don't forget to subscribe. Reaction turbines are widely used as steam turbines nowadays, but they have a different design from the one built 2,000 years ago. And this design was conceived by Sir Charles Algernon Parsons. The Parsons turbine uses moving blades that act as our tiny rockets, and a stationary blade that redirect the steam or gas into a new set of moving blades. The idea is to smoothly transfer the speed of the steam into the turbine over several stages, thus getting as much energy as possible. Not all turbines are smooth though, or have many stages. For example, impulse turbines. Impulse turbines use a different concept that was developed by Gustave de Laval, the man that invented the Laval nozzle, used in rockets to go to space. He didn't have rockets in mind when he invented it. He wanted to use the nozzle to spray bladed turbines with as much speed as possible. Here, the concept is simple. You just smash a fluid against the blade or bucket to push it forward. By redirecting the fluid direction, you transfer part of its momentum into the turbine. If tempted quick, it leads a little slower. Reaction turbines and impulse turbines make up about 99% of all the turbines used in the world. But there's an odd one out, one that uses a completely different concept. In 1930, one of the most influential inventors of the 20th century came up with this weird design for a turbine that has no blades. This design has been confusing everyone ever since. The inventor was Nikola Tesla, and the turbine was the Tesla turbine. What makes this turbine so confusing is the fact that it doesn't have blades. It's just a stack of discs. What makes you wonder, how does this work? Well, this turbine works using the stiffness of fluids. And when I say fluids, I mean anything that flows, including air. For example, look at this cylinder. You can really rotate around this bearing. If I drop some sticky honey on its surface, the honey sticks to the surface and makes it rotate. That's it, basically. That's the concept behind the turbine. Wait a second. Air is not sticky, is it? Well, it actually is. Not as sticky as honey, but it is sticky. Have you ever seen that trick in which you rotate a tomato using compressed air? The reason the tomato spins is because the air sticks itself to the tomato and imparts some of its movement into the tomato. I know what you're thinking. The tomato has irregularities, and those irregularities act as blades, which make the tomato into a very crappy impulse turbine. Well then, if that is true, can I explain how I'm able to replicate the trick with this very smooth and spherical ping-pong ball?
What you doing, bitch?
Yeah, the stickiness. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. Please don't subscribe, please. Sponsor time. Punchy. Sounds like a fitness app, right? But it's not. It's a 3D modeling platform used to make 3D models that can later be used to build trike bikes or even working robots. Yep, these companies are using Onshape, and I'm using it as well because I've been working with CAD software for about 13 years. I know it doesn't seem like it. And Onshape is the first one I can use anywhere I want because it's not really a software. It works like Google Docs. You can use it on a browser, which means it's also very easy to share files. Whether you're an engineer at work and you want to evaluate a new tool for your company, or you just need a CAD system for your at-home project, you can sign up for a free version of Onshape and start designing in a few minutes at onshape.pro/Intaxa. By clicking the link in the description, you're not just getting a great tool for your projects, but also you're helping this channel. And to that I have to say,
I'm in my mom's car.
back to the video. Imagine you want to use this stickiness concept to make a turbine. How do you design it? Well, maybe you start by the cylinder, like we did for the honey. Well, the cylinder would work, but you want to make it as efficient as possible. So instead of going like this, you go like this. A bunch of very thin discs very closely spaced to increase the surface area. And maybe you put the disc inside a cylindrical casing and inject the high-speed fluid tangentially, so it naturally spirals towards the center. As the fluid flows around the casing, it transmits its speed to the turbine in the smoothest way possible, without turbulence or losses, which means this turbine can in theory reach insanely high levels of efficiency. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But then again, we don't see the Tesla turbine anywhere nowadays. And the reason for that is because the Tesla turbine has a lot of speed, but no torque at all. Or at least that's what most people think. I found one that thinks the exact opposite.
Tesla turbine gets great torque, especially at low RPMs. That's when it gets the most torque.
Really?
Yes, the torque is proportional to the difference in the fluid speed and the disc speed. So when the disc speed is the slowest, the fluid speed is moving the fastest relative to the disc. Torque is the most.
Like, why is the Tesla turbine better than the current turbines?
These are manufacturing robustability, if you will. It's because no regular turbines can handle wet steam or particulates in it. Over time, you just erode the blades down. Because of the design of the turbine, there's no mechanical things for the turbine, for the fluid to smash into, and it's all actually through electronic adhesion or sticky. As you said, you can use a lower grade steam with it, which means you don't have to. You can use geothermal straight out of the pipe from the ground. Yeah, you can the salt, the minerals, the rocks. They're not going to hurt it.
The one that you have here, how much farther can you get out of it? Like electrical power.
Right now, the dyno test with compressed air that did 40. Only was at 40 psi at the nozzle.
40 psi.
Only 40 psi at the nozzle was 4,250 watts.
I know Charlie seems like your average Nikola Tesla fanboy, but he's not. He's a physicist that saw the potential in this technology and decided to make it a reality.
Put the gong back.
Look at that. Oh, those are some pretty big discs.
Oh yeah.
What are they made of? Like some special material, like stainless steel or something like that?
Cheap aluminum. Really? Yeah. So one of these discs.
And they can take it.
Absolutely.
Well, why does it have like little dimples on it? Like
to simplify the entire manufacture of the whole thing, instead of putting rivets in here, you stamp the discs all in one go, and the spacers are stamped into the disc.
Oh, so the dimples are the spacers.
And this way, none of the discs are actually rigidly joined to each other, so they can all expand and contract at whatever they need for whatever thermal range they need. Because sometimes
you get more flexibility out of them.
Yeah.
How many discs do you have in there?
There's 75 of these discs.
75?
75 of them.
And then you're using like, I noticed you're using like the LDC motors generators.
So those are straight out of my RC car.
Really?
That's straight out of my RC car.
And how much power can you get out of this?
Each they should be able to do 1,500 watts each at 12 volts, and 300 or 3,000 watts at 24 volts. That would be like peak.
Do you think we can give it a little tap of compressor?
Yeah, but after my compressor started.
Okay, let's just pause for a second and appreciate the fact that this Tesla turbine is putting out 1,200 watts of power because each one of those lights consumes 600 watts, and this is just with 25 psi of compressed air. Imagine if you use steam. The only thing I have to say to this is, I want that, and I got that. Charlie built me one.
It's 285 millimeters squared, buddy.
That works. But now you guys converting to metric. It's just shameful.
Like I said, all the physics I know is it's SI units, but all the like realistic sizes are standard converted units. So you want me to speed this up?
Yeah, you guys speed it up.
to believe. Huh? Can you? Yeah. Perfect. Ready?
So Charlie actually has a company called Test Your Energy, where he sells these Tesla turbine generators to anyone that wants to buy one. So if you're interested, you can find a link in the description. Also, he's giving away a Tesla turbine in this video.
We started a company, Test Your Energy, because it's our goal to bring this to everyone.
The whole system itself is not like very big.
No, it's all on that stainless steel table.
You can just put it on your garage.
Yeah, it's pretty compact. So it's a micro steam power plant. So if the grid goes down or just a blackout, you're covered.
Why is that bad? Nikola Tesla actually said that the Tesla turbine is his favorite invention, which says a lot because this man had over 200 inventions to his name. This is how new technologies are brought to market, with makers tinkering in their garages. I truly believe that makers should help each other, and that's the reason why I give away 3D printers on my videos. On the last video I gave away a 3D printer, and the winner was Doris. If you also want to win a 3D printer, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and post a comment suggesting a theme for a future video. The most liked comment will win a brand new 3D printer. Well, this is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, tomatoes are disgusting. See ya!
Why hello, my fellow apes. I hope you are well. Guided by Athena's wisdom, and if needed her spear, let's debunk some nonsense, shall we? Today, we're going to take a look at Michael Knowles as he stunningly and bravely takes on Christopher Hitchens.
You know, I was an atheist for 10 years, and one of the reasons that I was an atheist is the very unfortunate timing that I was a 13-year-old boy when Christopher Hitchens got really, really popular for being an atheist.
Was you now? You were 13. Are you sure? Considering that Michael is 33 years old now, it follows that he was 17 when Christopher published God Is Not Great and rose to atheist fame.
I was a 13-year-old boy.
So, not a great start.
Sort.
But hey, maybe Michael was employing a bit of hyperbole. Let's give him a break. In any case, as a young man, he really loved Christopher.
Chris Hitchens really was so clever, he seemed so witty, he was so drunk and sweaty and British. He just seemed really, really great at the time.
But now that Michael's a man, he's grown up, he finds Christopher pretty pathetic.
His stuff on God, in retrospect, seems like weak sauce.
You see, Mike was once an atheist, but as he grew up, he recognized that God impregnated a virgin with himself to sacrifice himself to forgive Mike for his ancestors being convinced by a talking snake to eat an apple from a tree. Damn it, you see, I'm just stuck in my 13-year-old mind, aren't I? It's unbelievable. Fortunately for us, however, the Daily Wire has put together a treat, with Mike being the man to deliver it.
So, the producers have picked the creme de la creme of Christopher Hitchens' atheist videos. I've not seen these videos, or at the very least, I haven't seen them in probably 20 years. And we're going to take a look back, decades after this man helped lead me down the dark road. Take it away.
If you meet someone in the street who you yesterday saw executed, you can say either that an extraordinary miracle has occurred, or that you are under a very grave misapprehension. And David Hume's logic on this, I think, is quite irrefutable. He says, what is more likely, that the laws of nature have been suspended in your favor and in a way that you approve, or that you made a mistake, especially if you didn't see it yourself and you're hearing it from someone who says that they did. After all, Lazarus was raised, never said a word about it. The daughter of Jairus was raised, didn't say a thing about what she'd been through. And the Gospels tell us that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves in Jerusalem opened, and arguments wandered around the streets screamed. So that his resurrection was something of a banality at the time. Not all of those people clearly were divinely conceived. I'll give you all the miracles, and you'll still be left exactly where you are now, holding an empty sack.
Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty damn excited to see how Mike's future intellect has improved since his atheist days. Before that, though, I've got a few preliminary comments. First, note that Mike is reviewing a short, which is to say that he's not reviewing the full point, let alone context. It's been squished into just 60 seconds.
The creme de la creme.
This might be an issue, but it might not. In any case, though, if the goal is earnest exchange and progress, then this is certainly a bad practice. Second, let me reiterate Christopher's 2 points so that we're all on the same page. Actually, no, let's have Mike do this.
Christopher Hitchens is saying, well, what's more likely? That you, the individual, were deceived, or that the laws of nature were suspended. But when we're talking about the resurrection, we're not talking about you individually being deceived. We're talking about 500 eyewitnesses to the resurrection being deceived.
Yeah, this isn't a good start. Give me a sec.
One extremely annoying shift later.
Alright, I've checked through Mike's weak flavoured water, and he does a very poor job. Spoiler, sorry, I've ruined it for you now, I know, you're just going to take off. But let me reiterate Christopher's 2 points because he doesn't. His first point, drawing from David Hume, is that when it comes to miracle claims, such as Muhammad splitting the moon, it's more likely that someone made a mistake or was deceived than it is that the laws of nature were suspended or broken. In other words, if you hear about something miraculous or supernatural, like a resurrection, it's far more probable that the person telling you about it is mistaken or lying than it is that the actual event occurred. After all, miracles are, by definition, violations of the laws of nature, and hence you need damn good evidence to justify believing them. The whole point here is one of epistemic consideration. If I made an extraordinary claim, say that someone's keys are missing because the ghost of Napoleon took them, then, until I gave you extraordinary evidence, you're going to think I'm a liar or mistaken. If I tell you that I have 500 witnesses because a book says 500 witnesses saw the event, you're going to cringe, as you should.
What is more likely? That the laws of nature have been suspended in your favor and in a way that you approve, or that you made a mistake, especially if you didn't see it yourself and you're hearing it from someone who says that they did.
So there's Christopher's first point. His second point is that even if we accept the miracle of Jesus Christ resurrecting, it simply doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur to insist that this proves that Jesus is God.
Lazarus was raised, never said a word about it. The daughter of Jairus was raised, didn't say a thing about what she'd been through. And the Gospels tell us that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves in Jerusalem opened, and the occupants wandered around the streets screaming. So the seems the resurrection was something of a banality at the time. Not all of those people clearly were divinely deceived.
Indeed, it seems that resurrections were happening all the damn time back then, and yet not everyone who resurrected is God, are they? Hence, even if Jesus resurrected, that wouldn't make him God. To think otherwise is to engage in the fallacy of a non sequitur. It simply doesn't follow. And for the record, this point from Christopher makes more sense when you watch the full context of his response, as opposed to the chopped short. But as noted earlier, we're not treated to this basic standard by the Daily Wire. So there's Christopher's 2 points. One, it's almost never rational to believe in miracles. And two, even if Jesus resurrected, this wouldn't prove that he's God.
I'll give you all miracles, and you'll still be left exactly where you are now, holding an empty sack.
With that, let's shift our attention back to Mike, where he has begun by addressing Christopher's first point on miracles. Let's hear it again.
Restorations and saying, well, what's more likely? That you, the individual, were deceived, or that the laws of nature were suspended. But when we're talking about the resurrection, we're not talking about you individually being deceived. We're talking about 500 eyewitnesses to the resurrection being deceived.
Are we now? Really? 500 eyewitnesses. As previously said, I've seen where Mike goes with this, and it's nowhere. It doesn't support this claim at all. I know, quite the power play. To this, then, we need really swing Hitchens' razor. What can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. But for what it's worth, it's likely that Mike is referring to Corinthians 15:3-8, which means he's talking about a book, the Bible, reporting that 500 people saw Jesus after he died. To apply this to my Napoleon claim, I appreciate that you're not quite convinced yet that the ghost of Napoleon took someone's keys, but how about this? Would this change your mind? How about I tell you that I have a book that says that 500 people witnessed the event? Are you now convinced?
Yeah, I didn't think so. We're talking about 500 eyewitnesses to the resurrection being deceived.
Well, if you're talking about the Bible's claim of 500 eyewitnesses, then no, we're not talking about 500 eyewitnesses, but rather one very biased source claiming that there were 500 eyewitnesses, and that is the biblical weak source.
We're talking about 500 eyewitnesses to the resurrection being deceived. We're talking about all of the apostles being deceived.
It seems that Mike is suggesting that the apostles were among the eyewitnesses. At least that's the impression he's giving me. But it's worth noting that the Bible makes clear that not all of the apostles saw Jesus die or resurrect. In fact, according to the Gospel of John, only one of the 12 apostles, John himself, is explicitly mentioned as being present at the crucifixion of Jesus. And as for the other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, none of them specifically mention any of the apostles being present at the crucifixion, and none at the resurrection. Not one of them.
The earliest Gospels were written within 3 or 4 decades of the resurrection.
So the exact dates of when the Gospels were written are not known, but scholars have made estimates based on historical and textual analysis. The earliest is said to be the Gospel of Mark, who, if you recall, didn't say that any of the apostles witnessed Jesus' death or resurrection, and it was written roughly 30 to 35 years after the death of Jesus. And the latest is taken from the Gospel of John, you know, the only Gospel who claims to have at least been present at Jesus' death, and is dated between 90 and 110 AD, roughly 60 to 80 years after the death of Jesus. So, John certainly had managed to live a very long life, especially for this time period. We might even call this a miracle, let alone the fact that he can remember all the details. But if we take the earliest Gospel, the Gospel of Mark, we're looking at 30 years. I don't know why Mike thinks that this is somehow a benefit for his case, because it isn't. Put it this way, if I told you that the book that speaks of 500 people witnessing the ghost of Napoleon taking someone's keys was written 30 years after the event, would this increase the chances of you believing the miracle? No, I didn't think so.
The earliest Gospels were written within 3 or 4 decades of the resurrection. That would be like me right now writing about Tupac Shakur. When I say, actually, Tupac rose from the dead. Well, if I said that, and if that story was spreading around, people would contradict me. It didn't really happen.
Yup, we'd expect to see people contradicting Muhammad's claims to visiting the moon and being communicated with by the angel Gabriel, but we don't see any evidence of this, do we?
Is in the New Testament accounts. It's referring to people who would have still been alive, whose relatives would have still been alive at the time these gospel accounts were circulating.
Indeed, relatives of Muhammad would have been alive when the Quran was written. Mike is doing a great job, is he not, of explaining why it's rational to believe that Muhammad split the moon, that Islam is true and thus Christianity is a lie. To bolster Mike's case, consider this. While the Gospel of Mark was written about 30 years after the death of Jesus, the entire Quran was written 12 to 24 years after the death of Muhammad. Good job, Mike. You're really exposing the weak source of Christianity.
And you have 4 accounts, all of which basically agree with one another. And where they would seem to disagree on certain details, they do so in the way that newspapers disagree about news events. As
Expedient methods save or travel.
This just means you got the keys to what you want and what you need. Something new, something sweet that you know. Can I get a That's nice.
Mike actually read the Gospels. To say that they only disagree in the same way that newspapers do is baffling. It is a few inconsistencies. Let's just scratch the surface. Matthew says that Joseph's father was Jacob, while Luke gives a completely different name. Matthew says Jesus was born in Egypt, but according to Luke, he was born in Bethlehem. Judas apparently hanged himself, but also fell over and split his guts all over the ground. Then we have Jesus' last words. According to Matthew and Mark, Jesus' last words were, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which somewhat amusingly translates from deity to human as me, why have I forsaken myself? Meanwhile, Luke reports that Jesus said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, which again is translated from deity to human as me, into my hands I commit myself. Whereas John reports that Jesus said, it is finished, to which I respond, if only. Not being able to agree on where an event occurred, how someone died, or someone's last words, seems a bit beyond what we'd expect from Mike's newspapers, especially when not being convinced that the Bible's message will result in eternal damnation. This doesn't seem to be inspired by an all-powerful, all-loving God, does it? In fact, the fact that they seem to disagree about certain details or seem to approach events from different vantage points actually would be a mark in their favor. Because if they were all exactly, completely in lockstep on vantage point and every single line, you would say, oh, this was just a try. You wouldn't say that, though, would you, Mike? You're just talking nonsense right now. I mean, put it this way. All four Gospels consistently speak of Jesus feeding 5,000. All of the Gospels make reference to 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But I guess, per what you've just said, we can completely discount this now. It's obviously contrived. No, of course we can't. Because this isn't actually the principle you judge by. Really, whether the Gospels agree or disagree with each other is irrelevant. You'll count them as evidence all the same. In fact, this was all circulated. The fact we see this in non-Christian sources. Present one. Go on. Present one non-Christian source that claims Jesus resurrected. Yeah, I didn't think so. The fact that this event changed the entire world and has withstood debunking for 2,000 years, and the best that Christopher Hitchens can offer is some stupid line from David Hume. Big sauce. What's the next one? Seriously, why are so many confident Christians like Mike so theologically underwhelming? Right, so Mike emphasized the fact that Jesus' alleged resurrection has changed the entire world. But one, the same could be said of many religious and mythological figures, and two, this fact in no way addresses Christopher's point. And then Mike has simply moved on. And the best that Christopher Hitchens can offer is some stupid line from David Hume. Big sauce. What is Mike on? How do Christians take what he's saying seriously? Is it the visuals? Is it the confidence, the lack of references, the perpetual stare of incredulity? The soup? What is it? Why is it that people like him are taken seriously when it comes to Christianity? This is nonsense. To wrap up, first note that it's obvious that Christopher wasn't presenting his best argument against Christianity. The creme de la creme. Second, note that Mike hasn't at all addressed either of Christopher's 2 points. To use Mike's example of Tupac, Christopher's first point was emphasizing that if someone came up to you and claimed that Tupac resurrected, you would be far more justified in thinking the person mistaken or lying than, Tupac actually resurrected. In fact, even if, say, 500 people claimed that Tupac resurrected, you'd still be far more rational to disbelieve them. Further still, if it turned out that the claim of 500 witnesses was not from 500 individuals, but rather one source written 30 years after the event, you'd have even less reason to buy the miracle. In fact, by all accounts, you'd be an idiot. In any other domain of discourse, people would consider you a fool. Man, Christianity is such an insult to God. Do you really think that an all-powerful, all-loving God would predicate salvation on his children being convinced of such obvious tripe? Don't waste my time. And I can't even imagine how many poor souls he's led away from God and to eternal perdition. Back to the point, Mike has given us no reason to doubt Christopher's second point. None. Mike didn't even attempt to address it. So it seems that Christopher didn't even have to leave the grave to dismiss this utter failure of apologetics. Weak sauce. And what of Christopher's second point? Even if Jesus resurrected, this wouldn't prove that he's God. Well, Mike, being the intellectual juggernaut that he is, simply ignored this objection. Big sauce. What's the next one? Truly, it's amazing to see just how much more intelligent Mike is since his days of worshipping Christopher Hitchens. At this rate, he'll be dribbling in his 40s. Well, that about wraps this one up. If you'd like to see me casually debunk Mike's other responses to the creme de la creme that Christopher has to offer, then just let me know.
Pass IT certification exams with Exam Topics, offering real exam questions and answers for all IT certification. Real questions, accurate answers, fast updates, guaranteed success. Detailed discussions by members to give you the most precise and verified answer with Exam Topics.
New research on a room temperature superconductor has the scientific community in a buzz, and for good reason. This will be one of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of physics. We're talking instant Nobel Prizes for the people involved and billions of dollars. Game-changing stuff. But there's been some controversy around superconductors in recent memory, and the bigger the claim, the more we have to be skeptical. So what's really going on? Is it really legitimate? And what could this mean? Let's figure this out together. I'm Ricky, and this is Dimension. By the way, this was the winning topic in our last poll, so don't forget to subscribe and vote on future videos to decide what we make next. Alright, so why does this matter? Well, 5% of the energy produced in the US is wasted during transmission through power lines. That's enough to power all 7 Central American countries 4 times over. With superconductors, you have basically no resistance, no losses, and near perfect energy transfer. That would be one of the game changers, and there's a whole bunch more. But we'll get back to that here in just a second. Let's start with what we know. A team of researchers from South Korea claimed they achieved a superconductor material codenamed LK99 at room temperature and atmospheric pressure. Superconductivity was first discovered by Dutch physicist Heike Kamerlingh-Onnes back in 1911. Like ferromagnetism and atomic spectral lines, superconductivity is a phenomenon which can only be explained by quantum mechanics. Now, that is a key factor in this story. It kind of ties it all together, and we'll get back to that multiple times throughout the story. The key requirements to be classified as a superconductor are the following. 1, the electrical resistance vanishes, and 2, magnetic flux fields are expelled from within the material. Don't worry, we're going to explain both principles. If you want to transfer electricity through a wire, you want something with as low a resistance as possible. Here's a table of some of the lowest resistances among metals. Silver is really low, but it's super expensive, so the worldwide standard is copper. To be classified as a superconductor, resistance has to be below 1 times 10 to the negative 13th ohm meters. This means that even copper has 168,000 times higher resistance than a superconductor. If you have a toaster at home and see those glowing red hot coils, that's probably nichrome, a material that's really high resistance. Now, it's high on purpose because it's built to waste energy as heat to toast your bread. But here's the crazy part. It's only 66 times higher resistance than copper. That means our worldwide standard material copper is closer to a horrible conductor than it is to a superconductor. One of the easiest ways to understand resistance is by thinking about an airplane flying through the air. A bad conductor, like our nichrome in our toaster, is like slapping on engines on a big refrigerator. Yes, it'll fly, but you'll be wasting a ton of energy to move it around. And then copper would be like a Boeing 787 Dreamliner with a blunt nose and tapered tail to absolutely minimize drag. This would require much less energy. And then our superconductor would be like that same Boeing 787 climbing out of the atmosphere and into outer space where there is no air molecules at all. Sure, I understand there would be no oxygen for the ingestion for the engine, there'd be no molecules for the lift of the wings, but if you think about it that way, that 787 would just fly at that speed indefinitely because there would be no losses. And that's kind of what's happening with a superconductor. We'll talk more about the benefits in just a bit, but first, let's talk a little bit about the drama and controversy surrounding this breakthrough. Now, there is a great deal of excitement, uncertainty, and doubt surrounding this discovery. In science and engineering, the greater the claim, the greater the skepticism you need to approach it with. But there's added skepticism through no fault of their own. Rhonda Diaz, a physicist at the University of Rochester in the US, had a paper published in Nature in 2020. In the paper, he and his colleagues claimed to have created a room temperature superconductor from a combination of carbon, sulfur, and hydrogen under extreme pressure. The publication Nature later retracted that paper in 2022 after other researchers were unable to replicate the results. Concerns were raised about how the raw data collected from the experiments was processed. Basically, they were saying there's fabrication, potential fraud, and other issues. The scientific journal Physical Review Letters, PRL, is reportedly preparing to retract a second paper by Diaz on the electrical properties of manganese disulfide. According to Nature, PRL is investigating allegations of data fabrication and falsification combined with concerns raised by the first retraction. But Diaz's team only solved the temperature problem. Their superconductor still needed super high pressures to work. So it wouldn't work in this room, for example. The temperature would be okay, but you would have to have incredible high pressures. Now, this latest breakthrough that we're talking about today from Korea claims that it works not just at room temperature, but at atmospheric pressure. That is a double game changer. And it's become controversial because of previous claims by Randa and others, and it's got the scientific community's guard up. They're really starting a new crypto exchange after the FTX debacle. It doesn't mean that it's not above board, but it's going to get much more scrutiny. No one is accusing the latest research team of being fraudulent, at least not yet, but there are some interesting things going on. For example, 2 papers hit the internet within 2 hours of each other. The first, room temperature ambient pressure superconductor, and later, a second paper titled Superconductors Show Levitation at Room Temperature and Atmospheric Pressure and Mechanism. Now, these papers were published in Nature or Science, but a preprint server called Marxist. This isn't in and of itself a bad thing, it just means that further corroboration and verification is required for wider scientific acceptance. If this turns out to be real, this is an automatic Nobel Prize. They have it locked up. But interestingly, it can only be shared among 3 people. The emergence of 2 papers and the NADAC to make sure people are getting credit is actually a good sign that there might actually be something to this claim. So here is a list of the 3 authors on the first paper and the 6 authors on the second. It's really interesting how all the credits and stuff work out and whose names get contributed to Nobel Prize. That's on the horizon. Now let's talk a little bit about the timeline of how we reached this breakthrough. Suk-Bae Lee met Ji Hoon Kim in 1996 and got their first taste of superconducting materials in 1999. Lee finishes his PhD in 2004 and sets up Key Center, which works on quantum computing and has direct ties to superconductors. It's the first time of quantum computers. By 2017, they were getting close to having something and started raising money. In 2018, Young Won Kwon, a physics professor, comes on board part-time as their CTO. In 2019, they confirmed that they have a room temperature superconductor working and filed for Korean patents for production of low-resistance ceramic compound. In 2020,
I was not able to chew. That's just how loose they were.
In 20, COVID happens, and they go heads down and finally isolate the superconductor, obtain its crystal composition, and analyze the characteristic structure. They make a submission to Nature and get rejected because of the Rhonda Diaz controversy. It's kind of a tough time to publish papers. They were asked to publish locally and get a peer review. To help with credibility on the world stage, they bring on Hyun-Tak Kim, research professor of physics at William and Mary, to help and further test and validate their claims. In March 2023, they filed for their international patent application. And of course, in July, they published the papers that we're here talking about. Okay, now let's look at how LK99 works. This is going to get a little bit technical. We'll try to keep it very easy to understand. But we have chapters below, and I wouldn't be offended if you skipped ahead. But this is going to be interesting, I promise. The key to such a major breakthrough comes from an unconventional form of superconductivity. In a normal conductor, free electrons within a material move around in a crystal structure and bounce off atoms and ions along the way. This creates resistance that makes them lose part of their energy, which is dissipated as heat and absorbed in the larger lattice. This is why resistivity is very closely tied to temperature. It's the higher temperature, the more ion motion there is, and more collisions and losses there are. And this is why normally superconductors have to be cooled to near absolute zero. But in a superconductor, this doesn't happen. The conventional explanation is the R.E. Cooper-Schrieffer theory, or BCS theory, from 1957. This theory explains that superconductivity is caused by the formation of Cooper pairs, which are pairs of electrons with opposite spins that are loosely bound together by a weak attractive force. Cooper pairs are different from normal electrons in that they can condense into a coherent wave of superconducting electrons. These pairs flow through the material as one, instead of moving as multiple free electrons. It's like someone guiding a group of people with a thin rope through a dark forest, as opposed to blindfolding everyone, putting them in the middle of the forest, and hoping they get to the other side without running into trees. But LK99 is like teleporting from one side of the forest to the other. The problem with Cooper pairs is that the string that keeps them together is weak, and any minor thermal vibration in the crystal lattice will break them apart, so you need very low temperatures for conventional superconductors to work. But LK99 doesn't rely on weak Cooper pairs. It relies on a new form of superconduction coined superconducting quantum wells, which enables it to work at much higher temperatures than ever thought possible. In the past, superconductors only worked near absolute zero, where you needed liquid helium to cool them. But then there was a new breakthrough of high temperature superconductors. But they were still incredibly cold. And you would need to be at around negative 200 degrees Celsius, and you could cool them with liquid nitrogen. But LK99 can work as high as 400 degrees Kelvin, that's 260 degrees Fahrenheit, or 127 degrees Celsius. That is a new temperature range that scientists didn't even think was possible based on the old theory of Cooper pairs. So how does it work? Well, it has everything to do with chemical structure. LK99 is a solid made by replacing some of the lead atoms in lead apatite with copper atoms, like this right here. Lead apatite is an insulator. In its structure, it forms a series of stacked columns of lead atoms surrounded by phosphate groups. This is what that structure looks like from above. You can see the circle of 6 light gray lead atoms and the external circle of pink phosphorus and other dark gray lead atoms. When we replace one of the outer lead atoms, which forms the framework of the structure with a copper atom, the entire structure shrinks by about 0.5%, because copper is smaller than lead and the whole thing gets a bit distorted. This shrinkage causes stress on the internal column of lead atoms and creates superconducting quantum wells along the column. This is like opening a series of portals between lead atoms inside that vertical column. Electrons can pop in and out from those magical portals through quantum tunneling, avoiding all obstacles and therefore showing no resistance. One thing I found interesting about this paper is that it explains superconductivity in a different way, yet it still works for other superconductors. It basically says that what you need to do is contract and distort the crystal structure to make these quantum wells. You can do that by lowering the temperature or increasing the pressure, which we've done in the past, but the moment that pressure drops, the temperature increases, your superconductor stops superconducting. The new way to do this is to change the structure from within, and just by adding this copper and increasing that stress, it appears they've done it. Now this is at the heart of what they've accomplished here. What's amazing is it's not particularly that exotic and we're hard to do. These are things that we've been doing for a long time. I honestly think this will spark a new wave of research, and before long, we'll have tens, if not hundreds, of new anti-superconductors for all sorts of applications. But how good of a superconductor is LK99? Not all superconductors are the same, and scientists classify them according to several performance metrics. First, there's resistivity. A low resistivity is what makes a superconductor. However, no matter what you've heard, it's not exactly zero. The threshold for a material to be considered superconducting is a resistivity of 10 to the negative 8 to 10 to the negative 9 ohm centimeters. As you can see in this graph, LK99 shows a maximum of around 4 times 10 to the negative 9 ohm centimeters, but in general, it's lower than that, around 10 to the negative 10 ohm centimeters. Then there's critical temperature. This is the temperature at which superconductivity is lost, and that defines a high or low temperature superconductor. This graph shows the measured voltage for different levels of current inside LK99 at different temperatures. The horizontal flat part is where it acts as a superconductor. Notice that as the temperature increases, that horizontal range gets smaller. For example, at room temperature, 298 Kelvin, has a really wide band of currents that it can support. But that shrinks the higher the temperature gets, all the way to this tiny range of superconductivity when the temperatures reach almost 400 Kelvin. But let's take a minute to appreciate that even at 400 degrees Kelvin, it's still superconducting, at least a little, and that was unheard of before, especially at ambient pressure. Lee and his team were only able to reach 400 degrees because their equipment couldn't go any further. Can you imagine the industrial applications a superconductor working at over 400 degrees Kelvin would have? One thing that was bugging me about superconductors is that if there's no resistance, can you get an infinite current inside a superconductor? Can I charge my car in like a second? And I found the answer is no. Notice that at high or low currents, the same graph, there's a jump in voltage. That signals a loss of superconductivity to quenching, which happens when the current inside the conductor generates a magnetic field that breaks superconductivity. The current at which that happens is called the critical current, or IC. Here is a plot of the critical current versus temperature for LK99. Really what it tells us is around room temperature, that critical current was what we saw earlier, around 250 milliamps. But that value quickly drops as the temperature increases. So really anything higher than that, and it turns into a regular metallic conductor. And finally, we have the famous Meissner effect, or superconducting magnetic levitation. The team of researchers actually managed to make a coin-sized sample levitate, well, sort of on top of a powerful permanent magnet. Here's actual video footage of the authors playing with the little sample, and you can see that there's definitely something pushing up. But is it floating? I'll let you be the judge of that. The Meissner effect is explained by the formation of little loops of electric current called screening currents on the surface of the superconductor. These currents are like electromagnets that generate a magnetic field that exactly cancel out the external magnetic field, so it levitates. This principle is what makes superconductors attractive for high-speed maglev trains. So at this point, you've got to be wondering, what's the catch? Rare materials? Complex processes? Toxic chemicals? No. This superconductor is actually pretty easy and cheap to make. All you need is lead oxide, lead sulfate, copper powder, and phosphorus. The entire synthesis is a 3-step solid-state process where you put the ingredients inside a sealed quartz tube and cook it in a lab oven at less than 1,000 degrees Celsius for about 4 days, and it's done. Once you get this ugly-looking rock, you can use it as is, or you can make thin films with it using thermal vapor deposition. This is standard technology in industries like electronics, optics, and aerospace. This is seriously game-changing technology, but there are many questions that are still unanswered. Is there a way to combine several conductors to achieve higher currents? I mean, 300 milliamps isn't a lot, especially for industrial purposes and power transmission. Can you imagine charging a Tesla on 300 milliamps? These measurements were made on a tiny sample. What would happen when you make this into a 12-mile track for a maglev train? Will it still work? How will this scale? And what about joints? Can you connect two pieces of LT99 and have superconductivity pass from one to the other? Or does it have to be one constant solid piece? These are things we just don't know yet. But if these guys' claims are legit, which they seem to be, we'll know very soon. And when we do, we'll have a follow-up video and we'll bring you up to speed on all the new findings. This is very early on, but it's very promising. The next steps are going to be critical. They have provided their work for the entire scientific community, and a lot of labs and research facilities around the world are trying it for themselves. The next step is corroboration and replication. Can other people do the same thing? This is part of what makes the scientific process so powerful, is repeatability. If only one person can do it, odds are there might be some foul play. But if others in the scientific community start to test it, which they will be doing in the coming weeks or so, we'll do follow-up videos and tell you how this plays out. The amazing part is that this is not exotic. The materials required are pretty common. Lead is a fairly common material beneath Earth's crust, and so is everything else required. Even the machines and fabrication processes are pretty straightforward. So there should be really no reason why we shouldn't have an answer in the next month or so. Now, let's assume that this actually is legit and all their claims are true. What could this mean for the world? Well, this would have a deep impact on almost every engineering discipline. One of the key benefits of superconductors is confinement. Let me give you 2 examples. The first is an MRI machine. MRI machines produce such strong magnetic fields that it's important to confine those fields to the room, otherwise they could be harmful to pacemakers or people that didn't sign up for an MRI. The first MRI machines used around 40 tons of iron to line the rooms they sat in to shield the magnetic fields. This makes it incredibly expensive and difficult to install MRI machines. But modern MRI machines use secondary electromagnets that operate in a superconducting state. They have zero resistance and can carry large amounts of current without overheating. The only catch is that these superconductors need to be cooled with liquid helium down to negative 269 degrees Celsius or 4 Kelvin. That's 4 degrees from absolute zero. And that is the largest part of the cost and maintenance of running MRI machines. But with room temperature superconductors, system design would be simplified dramatically, and MRI machines upfront and operational cost would be slashed significantly. Imagine MRI machines available for a lot more than just the most critical things and not having long wait times. Medicine game changer. How about nuclear fusion reactors? Again, the high energy plasma that is produced has to be confined, which is currently done with superconductors, and again at very low temperatures. This energy input to keep that superconductor material cold can be made away with in a world with room temperature superconductors. The Meissner effect would even allow for ultra-efficient, low-cost maglev trains like you mentioned before. You wouldn't need neodymium or other rare earth metals. You could use this room temperature superconductor. How about ultra-efficient electric vehicles that don't need battery or motor cooling? All the heat that is produced in copper from running windings inside of an electric motor have to be cooled because they're not perfectly efficient and do have some resistance. And this reduces efficiency twice because 1, you're wasting some of that electricity as heat, and 2, you have to run pumps and heat exchangers to handle that heat. Both of those things use energy that aren't propelling your car forward. Superconductors are also able to maintain a current with no applied voltage. Experiments have demonstrated that currents in the superconducting coil can persist for years without any measurable degradation. Experimental evidence points to a lifetime of at least 100,000 years. So might we be on the brink of a whole new industry of room temperature superconductor batteries? That's a video all by itself for another day. But by far, the most fascinating application has to do with the fundamental research Su-Bei Li was working on at Q Center, and that's quantum computers. If you've ever seen a picture of a quantum computer in all its glory, it's a really beautiful machine. The chip itself is actually really small. The rest of the machine is entirely made and there for keeping it cool. Room temperature SCs will be one of the biggest game changers and it will allow a world where we can have quantum computers on our phones and our laptops. We also mentioned power distribution, right? That's another one. Let us know in the comments below if there are other conditions where a room temperature superconductor would be completely game changing. Love to hear from you. This is one of the most exciting papers I've read in recent memory. And I started with a very healthy dose of skepticism because of the other falsified claims from a couple of years ago. But from what I've seen, there is reason to be optimistic, and we will have to wait for verification from other labs around the world. But what an amazing thing. I can't wait to see how this plays out. We will definitely cover it in future videos. If you have other ideas or other details that we've left out, let us know in the comments. We will definitely do a follow-up video with more context, and hopefully that was insightful. And if you thought that was cool, check out this video next. Till next week, I'm Richard Kenshi. Thank you so much for watching.
employee for you? My employer is looking for a captain for a high-end cruise ship. Perfect. We have some of the best candidates in the country. Great. We are an unconventional cruise line, and we are all about giving everyone a chance. Sounds good. Yes. So I was hoping we could start at the bottom of your deck and work our way up from there. So you want the worst candidate? Maybe. The very worst candidate is a man by the name of Jonathan Fall. He was at the bottom of his class, and he has all the qualities that you're not looking for in a leader, as you can see here. Gullibility through the roof, extremely low on natural authority, playfulness, suspiciousness. This seems like a great fit. Really? Wow, this is so great to hear. I'm going to make a huge deal about this, so tell everyone. Hey, please, Mrs. Walton. Discretion is of immense importance to my employer. Are you kidding? I'm already making an Instagram post. We have over 900,000 followers, so the reach is pretty spectacular. This is bound to go viral, and you and your employer will have your faces all over it. I'm so sorry, but we can't have that.
And there he is. Our crew is live inside the terminal where the recruited man has just arrived, escorted by armed guards.
선생님을 하는 사람들 조선. Just like that, oh baby, you're breaking my heart.
Oh, I cannot deal with that much.
Allora algo della ricordare? Drugs in your vehicle? No. Temporary. Check that out, please. Have you got a record? Again, no. What do you do for work? Says. Take a look. You won't find anything. If I want to find something, I'll find it. Keep up the attitude, and I'll take you in for disrespecting authority. One of our own was murdered. You know anything about that? What are you looking at? Nothing. Listen, Bob, my wife and daughter are home waiting for me. Can you please let me go? You better cancel your commitments. No ID and an attitude? You're coming for a ride with us. But I haven't done anything wrong. This is a mistake. It's not a debate. Let's go. Get inside.
It is a series of duels between 13 fighters representing the gods and the human race. The Ragnarok.
There's so many cops here. I wonder which of them you're going to send up first. You're all completely terrified, aren't you?
No one left in the world who can defeat me now!
I have one long request. Don't you die. I've decided high-stakes fights, please. I'm used to bleeding. You might want to stop ruining us, you cardinal wretch. I need a lawyer who can give me my freedom back. Are you the lawyer? When I am right, there's no better criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles.
What'd you say your name was?
Nikki.
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 It's all right. Nikki Roy.
Taking over a high-profile murder for a lawyer who was just gunned down.
See if it's worth a damn. Oh man. Is this fresh? Fuck, I thought y'all had more of it. Oh man. Iron plates, add material. Look at this.
Hey, where are you? I've been calling you for like an hour.
Well, no, you're not my wife anymore.
Oh, I can't send you that then. But there's still some information you can go get anyway. Other than more like your mother. Can't do that thing. You think I can't tell when you're holding the phone away from your ear? What I am is the person who runs this practice. You're flexible today. You're not such. I need to be able to reach you.
Okay, you'll reach me. What's the problem?
You got a call from Joe Coley. Well, maybe anybody else thinks
She too?
everybody should call this guy again. This time you're not sleeping with this woman.
No, what did you say?
Yeah, the only reason you'd be called to the private chambers of a female judge is when you got a case before her, but you have a personal relationship and you haven't had any cases at all for like a year.
I never even met the woman.
Well, she wants you to be like connected.
You didn't say what it was about.
Now, when you please allow for the possibility that this might be something positive, maybe you can stay trying to do pro bono or whatever. What could it work? Right.
You're here.
That one is.
They're in storage.
I get one out of storage. The Lincoln becomes you. And you become you. And should this thing here present as a real opportunity, you gotta go in there full Nikki Hollow.
Fine.
your chamber.
Did you do something?
Oh, now you have done something.
Then why did she come to the chambers?
I don't know, which is why I'm asking. What can you tell me about her?
I can tell you she's got a bug up her ass the size of legal paramedics, which makes me think you've done something.
Okay, man, thanks. I'll see you tonight.
He's done something else. Oh, man.
Or not?
Who's judging this one anyway?
Oh, you want to check him out?
That's good. That's good. I always love this one.
You can have one.
This could be a very big deal. She's the presiding judge, for God's sake, so I came down to gather whatever intel I could. And most of her work is administrative, which means which judge was where and so forth.
And
She assigns cases. And if that's what this is about,
you don't want me to do it.
just saying. Whatever this is, it has to go well. That's all I can do.
Don't hold it?
I don't believe you have to come back.
No, you don't.
No. Come on. So what do what they call you?
You do, yes. We did.
Why?
You worked out in my car. And for the court security. Driving and so forth.
Being on the ready to flee the jurisdiction if need be.
We fled the jurisdiction.
Have a seat. What's your relationship with Jerry Vincent?
Jerry Vincent? I used to go up against him back when he was prosecuting and switch sides.
He was an underclass, right?
Excuse me?
Shot in his car. If you were close, please accept my condolences, but that's not why you're here. Where are you close?
Family smells like.
You left his practice.
I think if that.
Mr. Vincent filed a motion with the court 10 days ago that allowed for the transfer of his entire practice to you. Should he become incapacitated and deceased? He never discussed this.
No.
Last night he became deceased, which means what was his is now yours. Including the Trevor Elliott trial. You have heard of that.
No. That guy who closed out in court.
Allegedly.
For my case?
For all of your cases, Mr. Foley. You might not get to keep them. Every client has the right to move on to another attorney with the prize of Mr. Vincent's demise. What it does mean is you get a fresh shot. Assuming I'm satisfied that Mr. Vincent's clients will be transferred to a replacement counsel of good standing and competent skill. As far as I can tell, you haven't had any cases in quite some time.
I was in an accident. Sorry.
Consultation.
Whatever concerns you may have about my reputation.
It's my reputation I'm concerned about. I'm the one who's trying to help you. For now. Why you? Of all the lawyers out there,
Honestly, Your Honor, I have no idea.
if you were to guess,
Well, as I said, Jerry and I were friendly and trusted each other. And secondly, this is subjective. When I am right, there's no better criminal defense attorney in this country. Jerry and I were just.
and you think you're right now. monitor you, Mr. Howard. I run an updated inventory of cases by the beginning of next week. After that, a bi-weekly status update of every case on which we will be named counsel. Am I clear? Fine, Sam. I suggest you get to Mr. Vincent's office right now. The police are no doubt searching and probably invading their privacy as we speak.
Thank you, Ron.
Good luck, Mr. Howard. Well, did you get a case?
I just got one. Can you turn it over?
What?
I need to meet with the clients, get their sign-offs. I might be back. I might actually be back.
What's an example of a positive visualization? You wake up, not a single client. Now you are writing about a Trevor Elliott in a murder trial.
Okay, besides the TV.
Positive thinking, Mickey. Positive thinking.
Close. No real business on this floor. Not today, though. Talk to the judge. See some ID?
You know, you don't help yourself being Mickey D's. This way.
Help you?
Thank you, Howard. Journey, taking over Mr. Vincent's place.
You need to go back to the office. This is a crime scene. It's where you steal
The
rock.
crime scene was a parking garage, actually. Not this office. The client files here I need to access and turn on safe house.
What's your name was?
Thank you, Howard. This is one Crane. She worked for me.
Well, you can go. You're fine. And you both leave. No.
Mickey D's, I'm telling you.
What was that?
Oh, that wasn't meant for you. Mickey, heard me.
Contaminating a crime scene. You can't be here.
This order will confirm I've been appointed as the presiding judge of the Superior Court, replacement counsel to Jerry Vincent's clients. That means his cases are not my cases, and you have no right to be in here looking to file. That's attorney-client privilege.
Mr. Vincent been murdered. The motive could be one of these
Well,
files.
isn't that what the case? Just read the order, detective. Your crime scene's out in the garage, and no judge in LA would extend it to this office and these files.
You say it's giving all of Mr. Vincent's cases.
Good.
You just think it's someone else.
You can.
A suspect list. He's dead. And we have the whole business. It's murder. Outrageous. Couldn't tell us where you were last night between 8 and midnight?
You got me, detective. You got me. I killed Jared. Case closed. Case closed, everybody! Clearly, you've done this before now. Are you gonna get out of here? Or do I need to quit the job?
Guys,
Nice to meet you, too.
Bye.
let's go. Leave everything.
What?
You know, sometimes I think we don't teach it in the academy how to piss people off. When you think of all the bad blood in this town between the people and the police, one would think how not to piss people off would be part of the brain.
How did you feel about the hiring system?
Huh? Mickey,
This is good investigator. Probably one of the best I've ever worked with.
working with your ex-wife is one thing. Hiring your ex-wife's boyfriend is pushing it even further.
If Trevor decides to keep me, I'm gonna need to move fast with an investigator I can trust. Cisco. Thank you, Honor. Yes, sir. 2 p.m. and 2 p.m. today? Yes, I'll be there. Thank you.
Who's that?
Judge Scantor's clerk. I'm sure he has a trial today.
What?
Yep.
Are you gonna eat your sandwich?
No, Lorna, we can have it.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, coming for Jerry Vincent?
Oh, I heard. Sorry. afternoon.
Caller. You know,
You're the client's name?
right. It's Brad's first name, AC, Kenshi theft.
That would be Mark Daniels, who I'm covering for, so that's actually mine. Right back from the guy.
Obviously, I'm going to make a continuance.
Obviously, I'm not going to give it to you.
What?
Too bad I had some witnesses. I'd rather they be pissed off at the judge or you than me, especially if I want to get them back. LA 292-587, People versus BizarroIsNo1. Sarah Shepherd for the people, Judge. Ready for trial.
You could holler for the defendant, Your Honor. Okay, we'll give him 1 second. I approach. Your Honor, Mr. Vincent unexpectedly passed yesterday and failing at mine to a few condolences. When will you be ready? Well, when you be. It's a bench trial with 2 witnesses.
Out of town witnesses. Run that risk of losing with the continuance.
I'll do it. Tomorrow. Look at the file. If you feel like you can't be ready, let me know. Okay. This case is continued until tomorrow, 10 a.m. What? Sir? Your Honor, we flew down here from San Francisco for this. This is simply not fair. I'm afraid we have an emergency. What about the victims? We had an emergency. My wife was attacked, for God's sake. She had a necklace violently snatched off her person. And the court is sympathetic, but it's unavoidable. This case is pushed over until tomorrow at 10 a.m. Victims have no rights in this process. Excuse me. That's what she stole?
At least your client has taste. Where's Jared?
I guess it doesn't work in charge.
He was such a nice man. He wasn't even trying to. At least not yet. Why does he look back?
I don't know. The police are trying to find out this.
What kind of world is this?
I'm not going to be ready on that case by tomorrow, so anything you can tell me.
I did not attack her. I snatched the necklace and ran. I did not attack her.
Okay. Is there a reason Jared didn't try to plead this?
Because they wanted 2 years. And Jerry said it was excessive. He thought with the trial I can at least impress the judge with my extenuating circumstances.
Which are?
I'm a good person who had a drug problem. It wasn't me who stole that necklace so much as somebody I don't even recognize. Somebody who's gone. I might be rehab. I'm in recovery.
I believe it. One more job if this is really wrong. I'm just watching. You?
Same, basically. Yeah. I trust this thing. I think about something.
So Jared plans to put you up.